torturing Rob with cursed face swaps.
check 2. Hello. Check. What's up, Marina? Thank you. I'm wearing the 5-inch inseams as well. I am, if you're wondering what's going on downstairs, I do have the 5-inch inseams as well. What is going on, friends? Hello. Power Frog, just don't question it. Power Frog says, somehow I'm subscribed. Hello to you, Power Frog. Guess what? You're part of the community now, and you're not allowed to leave. Okay? You're not allowed to leave now. Don't question it. Don't question it, Power Frog. We're as unhappy as you are, pal. Listen, no, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like it. You're here now, though. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave, as the famous song says. Cursed Sam Cider, thank you for the 18 months of Tier 1. It has indeed been a year and a half, torturing me with cursed face swaps. I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you to Cursed Sam Cider. Forever trapped in this chat. Unfortunately for you, yes, that is what's going on. That is what's happening. Is Canada going on strike? It's a good question. It's a good question. We got the Quebecois unions are joining in with the QP strike. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Solidarity is sorely lacking here in this country, this cursed fake country. I mean, the teachers' unions can't even see it fit to show solidarity with the QP workers. So
you can count
I'm not going to hold my
me.
breath.
Good old
This is going to lead to
Rob
some kind of
to,
general
talk you
strike
through all this.
situation. Thank you, Mondo Michel, for the 17 months of Prime. Thank you. Is it No Shave November? I don't know. I mean, it's Movember, and I did a reverse Movember by shaving my mustache. But just because I shaved my mustache doesn't mean that I'm adopting some kind of clean cut aesthetic, okay? It was a fun little experiment, but I'm not so sure about it. And I miss having my mustache. I miss having it. And I want to grow it back now. I'm going to go through the long and arduous process of growing that back. We got to stop branding stuff so that if you shave in the month of November, you don't have to say that you're doing a reverse Movember. I mean, it's like ridiculous. I'm a grown man here. I'm here saying the words reverse Movember. This is what our culture has come to. This is evidence that we live in a sick, decaying society and culture. When I have to come up here in front of dozens of people and say the words reverse Movember. You know? That's not cool. If I didn't shave for 6 months, I'd have what Rob has now. I mean, HDA, that's the thing. It's when I was in my 20s, for example, I had nothing approaching this. It took me to almost 40 to even have this, and this is not very extensive. Canada is a figment of our imagination, Power Frog. That's right. You're going to fit in here just fine. Doing Movember and No Nut November at the same time to try and spontaneously combust. Oh boy. Yeah, it took me to be almost 40 to even have this. And I actually had the same thing where I at first it was half of my face that developed it first. It's taken me to be nearly middle-aged to be able to just even have this. So, don't feel bad, you know? I'm not even going to read some of these salacious comments here in the chat. already. It's Monday. It's Monday at G Cluppy's time. What is it? Is 9:52. It's 9:52 a.m. and G Cluppy's just coming at the gate with all kinds of salacious comments. Eating breakfast, just spreading filth in the chat. Unbelievable. Oh boy. How was everyone's weekend? I hope it was good. My weekend was all right. What did I do? I ate Pizza Hut and watched Return of the Jedi with my son, and on Friday. That was fun. And we watched Empire Strikes Back on Friday. We watched Return of the Jedi on Saturday night. We took down our Halloween decorations. Pretty uneventful. How are my kids supposed to watch Bluey if we cancel Disney Plus? That's a good question. It's a great question, actually. How am I going to watch Andor? Actually, there are ways. There are ways. There are ways, dude. You don't even want to know. Hell, I could get you a 1080p Bluey episode by 2 o'clock this afternoon with subtitles. Have you shown your son the Gorbachev Pizza Hut ad? I have not. I have not. I don't think you would quite understand the political ramifications of that, actually. I'm not so sure. And yeah, if it was just me, I would probably just pirate. I would pirate Andor, whatever else I want to watch. Just for having kids, it's good to have Disney Plus. I don't know. It's very convenient to have everything in one spot. It's easy. You get all the classic films. You know, you get Bluey, all the Star Wars stuff, all the Marvel stuff, all the there's like 20,000 Spider-Man episodes across varying series. You know, it's just a no-brainer. Disney manufactured our childhood and is selling us our childhood feelings back to us. That's right. They take all those nostalgic feelings and they grind it up into this little pablum, and then they give us our little feeding tubes full of our nostalgia pablum in our little hamster cages. And they just go, thank you, master. Thank you. That's what we do, isn't it? As I was doing that gesture, I was like, that might be problematic. Plus, MASH is on there as well. Exactly. MASH is on there as well. I get the tasty nostalgia juice when I press the Disney Plus button. It's true. I'll still drink that garbage. That's right. It's like we're living in the Andor prison. Without getting into the Andor spoilers, you get a little feeding tube with their little paste, their flavorless paste that they eat up. Just gobble it up like little piggies, don't they? You know what movie I kind of rediscovered recently? I don't remember even watching this one that much, but like the Disney movie. You know, I grew up in the 90s, so the Disney movies that I grew up with.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for gifting a sub to Frankster says, G Cluppy. Thank you. G Cluppy, the person that hates me in this community and doesn't want to support me, but mysteriously somehow continues subscribing to the channel and occasionally gifting subs as well. Hates the stream. Yeah, I saw you posting about Andor, old Dutch. I'm glad you got into it. It's completely out of spite, yeah. And now Frankster says is stuck here as well. The Disney, I grew up in the 90s, so my Disney movies were like Aladdin, that was the big one, Beauty and the Beast, like that era. Little Mermaid, those ones, the late 80s, early 90s, Lion King. The one I don't think I ever really watched when I was a kid that I watched when I was an adult and really, really loved is Robin Hood. Like the Robin Hood where Robin Hood is a fox. I feel like that's probably the best Disney movie. It's so good. The music is so good. It's such an interesting mix of like, it's like Southern United States folk music mixed with like the Robin Hood legend and British stuff. It's a weird mix, but it's so fucking cool. Really good movie. Really probably the best Disney movie. I was doing this gesture and I was like, it's one of those moments when you're streaming and you start doing something and you're like, this is not a good idea to be doing. This is not a good idea to be. Sometimes I'm cognizant of it and I do it intentionally and lean into it. This was not one of those times. And I just go, thank you, master. Thank you.
That's not great.
Thank you, master. Thank you. It's not great. Eventually in year three, I will learn these lessons to like not do stuff like that under any circumstances. Sometimes I'm like, people will understand the context of this. People will understand the context of this, and they never do they? Do you? No, but the Disney Robin Hood though, really good one. Really, probably my favorite Disney movie. I love all the music in the movie, but I really love this sort of sad part when everyone's like in jail for not paying taxes, and the narrator, the troubadour, what's his name, Alan Adale, sings that song. Every town has its ups and downs. Sometimes ups outnumber the downs, but not in Nottingham. Love that one. Love that one. That's right, Ben. It is sing-song time. It is absolutely sing-song time right now, Ben. Thank you for joining us. Ben, one of the many huge stars I've got stopping by tomorrow. It is a very special day tomorrow, folks. It's voting day. It's the midterm elections in the United States. I'm putting together a star-studded TRRS election spectacular. All kinds of wonderful guests. All kinds of wonderful big celebs stopping by, including Bleep Blomp Ben, couple of other big names, big all-stars stopping by tomorrow. Glenn Greenwald, that's right, that's the big one. That's the big one. Did you see the new 60 Minutes about China forcing children to be chronically online? No, I didn't, which is funny considering they're literally taking steps to do the opposite of that. Meanwhile, like our culture, fortunately no kids are chronically online in our culture, then that would be hypocritical. Fucking Christ. Outrun. Jesus, the GIF and the disc. Why did I do that? Why did I do this? Okay, let's see this, Ben. Anyway, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. on this very channel, folks. Big, exciting midterm election spectacular with special guests. Can you have PJ Chio for a whiteboard like that MSNBC guy when she's explaining why Twitter is suppressing her? It's funny because Twitter is suppressing me, but you don't hear me fucking complaining about it, right? It's just, there's no way, like, even if you have evidence, even if you have proof, verifiable evidence that you're being suppressed by Twitter, there's no way that you can talk about that without seeming like a huge loser. So it's just like, you might as well just, even if you could find documents saying like, we're expressly shadow banning this individual for their political speech, you can't talk about, you just can't do it. You just have to let it go. You just have to accept it. Let's see this clip that Ben just shared with us.
Owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. And Harris says the version that's served to Chinese consumers, called Douyin, is very different from the one available in the West.
Oh boy.
In their version of TikTok, if you're under 14 years old, they show you science experiments you can do at home, museum exhibits, patriotism videos, and educational videos. And
look at his face. Holy fuck. Ben, how did you share? You should have put a trigger warning on this, because this is terrifying stuff. This is truly terrifying.
they also limit it to only 40 minutes per day. Now, they don't ship that version of TikTok to the rest of the world. So it's almost like they recognize that technology is influencing kids' development, and they make their domestic version a spinach version of TikTok, while they ship the opium version to the rest of the world.
Amazing. I don't know if he's using that analogy intentionally. That's an amazing analogy, though. You know what? We fucking asked for it. We fucking asked for it. You know, if they should, we deserve it, frankly. We deserve it. We absolutely deserve that. We kind of had it coming. So frankly, I'm not going to complain too much about it. Perhaps our government should just fucking do its job and step up and determine what content goes on the platform, maybe, or determine how long kids are able to do it. Unfortunately, we don't have a state that has any interest in doing that. Is that China's fault? Is that their fault? That our government is just like, no, let your kids watch whatever fucking faces of death videos and whatever crazy non-stop stream of brain melting propaganda 24 hours a day for all we care. That's not their fault. They have a state that steps in and say, no, we're not going to allow that. Do we have the same thing? No, we don't. That's not their problem.
The version served to the West has
and
kids
have good old
hooked.
Rob to talk you through all this.
TRRS MRX.
Let the Chinese kids go on rotten.com. Thank you. Don Dark Zoni, thank you so much for the 23 months of tier 1 and all the support. 1 month away, Don Dark Zoni, from the highly exclusive 24-month badge. How exciting for you. China has a version of the internet that prevents disaffected youth from becoming school shooters. How is that fair? How is that fair? At this point, regulating TikTok would lead to reactionary revolution. Is probably true. Yeah. Yeah.
For hours at a time. The impact, Harris says, is predictable.
There's a survey of preteens in the US and China asking what is the most aspirational career that you want to have.
I've seen stuff like this.
In the US, the number one was influencer.
Social media influencer.
And in China, the number one was astronaut. Again, you allow them.
How is it their fault? You're literally talking about our awful decaying culture collapsing on its own, and it's like you're blaming them. You're blaming them. How is that their fault that our culture is dog shit? That's not their fault. China good and America bad. I agree.
Those two societies to play out for a few generations, I can tell you what your world is going to look like.
TikTok tells us it gives American users tools to limit screen
and we deserve
time,
it.
But those tools are entirely voluntary.
That is amazing. That is fucking amazing. We're taking our evidence of our decaying bullshit culture, just swirling the fucking drain, swirling the toilet, and we're like, can you believe these fucking Chinese people who are doing better than us? It's their fault that we're like this. It's their fault that we're like this. Come on. Why are they doing this to us? Why did they invent this? Why did they invent this phenomenon? Amazing. They literally gave us the platform. We're the ones filling it with shit. Exactly. Like maybe we should take that up with us. China's given us a mirror app. How dare China send us this mirror that we gaze into and see the disgusting filth staring back at us? How dare they? How dare they do this? That's great. That's very funny. My kids suck and this is China's fault. Oh man. I mean, it's like a cousin of the narrative about like how did we have no manufacturing in our country anymore. What happened? Looking around is like it's a big mystery. Where are all the factories? Why does no one have good union jobs anymore? What the heck? It must be China's fault. Why did China do this to us? It's just a total. They just hoodwinked us. They forced us to offload these nefarious Chinese tricksters. They forced us to offload our entire manufacturing industry and destroy all those good union jobs and destroy the labor movement in our country. Gah! How do they do this? These kids don't even want real jobs. They want to be a YouTube. Why did China do this to us? Eric. That's right, Seth. They were sent overseas by greedy capitalists. That's correct. That's just why it's funny that I think we're pointing the finger and blaming the people that benefited from this deal. You know? They were like, sure, we'll take your manufacturing industry. Yeah. Sure, we'll take your whole manufacturing industry. And how about we use that to completely advance and modernize our whole society and build these massive infrastructure projects, massive modern cities, massive modern transit systems with this manufacturing industry that you just like handed over to us on a silver platter. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions, that's right. Ryan's World, a famous child YouTube unboxer, is an op from China to get kids to buy things from American companies. Fuck, my kid loves Brian too. He loves it. He keeps watching that garbage. He does. Love to imagine she just thinking about the NYC subway, just laughing his ass off. The NYC subway should be a fucking national disgrace. I mean, it's like the NYC subway should be all the evidence that anyone could ever possibly need that Western-style capitalism has failed, right? I saw that guy, that tweet the other day that was just like, the defund the police movement. I heard a guy from New York City. This guy that was like, I don't think about you at all. Yeah, factories are socialist. I'm glad we don't have any. That's right. That's right. That guy from New York City that was like, the defund the police movement nothing has hurt the Democrats more than this defund the police movement. From New York City, a place where the New York City Police Department has a bigger budget than most militaries, like in countries around the world. And meanwhile, the fucking subway system is just like this rat-infested, decaying cement, like disgusting, fucking leaking disgrace. And people are just like, how could this have happened? How could this have happened? Pretty funny. How did China do this to us? Everything is China's fault. Why did China do that to the NYPD police budget? Exactly. Why? They took our subways. Yeah.
You've just become an elite member of
goodness.
the Friendship Triangle.
Goodness gracious. Don Dark Sony, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you. China invented TikTok and tax cuts to the rich in order to make our kids dumb. Everything we don't like is China's fault. Very funny. Very funny stuff. They want all our kids to be doing complicated dances while they learn about the secrets of the universe on the good TikTok. Everything we don't like is China or Russia's fault. That's the amazing thing, too, about how they're firing up the Russian disinformation machine as well, just prior to the midterms, you know? It's weird how, like, Russia only interferes in American elections that go badly for Democrats. Do you ever think about that? So they interfered in 2016. So the Obama administration, that Russia was not involved whatsoever. They get heavily involved in 2016. And Russian disinformation just like ruins the election, steals the election. In 2018, which was good for Democrats, we didn't hear much about that. We didn't hear much about this Russian misinformation and election interference and this kind of stuff. It was only Canadian election interference that we heard about. But now, and in 2020 as well, the Russian disinformation just didn't seem to do anything. It didn't seem to accomplish all that much in 2020. In 18 and 20, the Russians were like, we're going to take this time off. We're going to take some time to not do election interference. Okay? Da. We've done enough interference. We're going to take the next few election cycles off. Okay? That's what they did. And now in 2022, they're like, no, we're coming back to it. We're doing more. Fire up the disinformation machine, Vladimir. Sergey. Sergey, start doing the disinformation again. Please. Killer Russian accent. Thank you, Aaron. I'm just working on that. I'm just busting this out recently. Just working on this. Hello, I'm from French, learning my English. Well, hello, Insdiku. Hello. Bonjour. Et moi, je parle français aussi, là. Si tu veux, on peut parler en français aussi. Les personnages dans le chat, dans la communauté, ils n'aiment pas le français, malheureusement. Désolé, mais moi, j'aime le français, moi. Donc, si on peut parler en français toute la journée, si tu veux. They're trying to learn English. I guess I should not do that. Yeah. Oui, chef. C'est ça. Oui, un stream français. Ben, sacrément besoin de faire un stream en français. C'était 2 années complètes de TRRS. Avec 101 streams en français. C'est le temps aujourd'hui pour complètement un stream en français. Sacrément, tabarnak. Sorry, I'm throwing in the Quebec curse words. I don't know if you're from France. That might be upsetting to you. I can fuck with this. I'm not actually going to do this. I can't do it. Even if I wanted to. Even if I wanted to do an entire stream in French, I'm already hitting the limit of like what I'd be able to do. Cela ne me dérange en aucune façon. Je suis actuellement laughing. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that. Je ne peux pas comprendre cette French bullshit là. Okay, it's enough of this now. It's enough of this. Are folks in Quebec aware of the disdain with which their French is held in the francophone world? I think so. How do you say Putler in French? I don't know how you would say that, but I know it's it's Vladimir Putin. Putin. Because it couldn't be Putin, because that's like a curse. So it's Putin. It had to be either Putin or Putin. But yeah, I think people in Quebec understand that. I know it's viewed in France as being like it's like the colony dialect, like the rotten colony dialect. The French have disdain for everyone. Quebecois aren't special. That's true. That's true. You have to do it the Freeland way. Vladimir Putin. Putin. God, she's so fucking obnoxious when she does that. And we're going to get into our Christia Freeland segment very soon. We got the Christia Freeland segment coming up. It's not even that long. It's just we can laugh at the little clip that you know. We can laugh at the Christia Freeland clip that went viral over the weekend. I know that's the content Marina's here for. I know I hate it too, Outrun. I hate it too. But I had to, as soon as I saw that clip, I had to send it to Marina. Is that the one with a Nazi grandpa? Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Ben. That's right. We can watch it only if we all laugh in French. That's right. That's correct. And fucking annoying. I'm just going to get a beverage, folks. I'm going to get a beverage, okay? Just be 1 sec. Sorry, there's like a scratch there. Sorry, just one moment. Okay. Sorry if I just ruined everyone's No Nut November there. Communists drink buble, we now know. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Oh, contrary, not twice as much in November. Good. Do you want to see my art? I bought some art. I've never really bought art before. I mean, it's just posters. I don't even know if it counts as art. But I bought some special posters, some communist posters, at the advice of friend of the stream, Dmitry Ulyanov. I don't know if he's going to be around. That's right. I bought some NFTs. That's correct. And today why is it doing that? Today I went and picked up some frames. I went and picked up some frames this morning to like frame it, and now I just need to put it up on my walls. Here we go though. Here's the artwork that I just got. These are the two big ones, the two big pieces that I got. You have this like it's like a death to global imperialism thing. This like Soviet propaganda poster where you have the dragon of global imperialism surrounding this factory with the workers trying to like fight it off. And then you have this May Day poster, this Soviet May Day poster. Those are the two like big pieces. And then I got a couple smaller ones as well. I got this Cuba, this 1968 Cuban Revolution poster. I got this one about this pro-literacy Soviet propaganda poster. And then this one about joining the Spanish Civil War. Where are those from? They're from a website called Propagandopolis. Which I recommend if you're into this kind of shit. I had never really bought, like for years, I had never really bought like artwork or things that I can kind of decorate with. I've always just kind of like avoided or abdicated any responsibility to do that kind of stuff, which I'm trying to take more of an interest in now. So I bought this stuff. Just framed those this morning, so I'm going to be putting those up. I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to that. Also, I shared this in the Discord server, but my dad just picked up a Lenin bust. And as you all know, I already have a Lenin bust, this tiny little guy. We all love tiny Lenin. Okay? Which I have on my desk. You know, we love tiny Lenin. But my dad actually just picked me up. He found on eBay this like authentic one, a little bit an actual bigger, actual bust size. This Lenin bust, and it's like it's like authentic. Hold on. It's like authentic. It's got some Russian on the back there. So I'm getting some good stuff over here. Hey, Nick, what's up? So I'm getting some cool shit over here. I'm getting some cool shit. I got posters. I got propaganda posters. I got a Lenin bust. And yet he purchased it using capitalism. Believe me, my dad owns no capital. He'd be the first one to tell you. He'd be the first one to tell you he owns no capital whatsoever. Nick, you're going to have to come over and check out some of this stuff. I was meaning to text you, Nick. You're going to have to come over and hang out sometime. You're not privy to all this new shit. Exactly. Dan makes 3D printed busts on demand if anyone's looking. Oh, that's kind of interesting. That's fucking interesting. You want to improve society, but you buy tiny statues. Interesting. Yeah, so what's going on with Ford? Apparently there's news about this, but I didn't really look as much this morning. What's going on with Ford and the QP strike? Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. Let me get confirmation on this. But according to our friend David Moskrop, and David, by the way, is going to be coming on the stream sometime this week to talk more about this stuff. I've been talking to David about coming on the stream. So QP has made the decision to halt strikes. David says, my sense is it's a good move. You limit the risk of public sentiment turning against you while keeping future strike action on the table, and you get Ford back at the table and a shot at a fair deal. So what has happened here, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they're going back to the bargaining table. The workers are going back to work and they're going back to negotiate more. Is that correct? I mean, I still don't have a ton of confidence that Ford is actually going to give the QP workers what they're asking for, right? And I guess the question we need to be asking ourselves is, do they need to, should they hold out? Should they hold out to get the deal that they were asking for? Is it going to hurt or harm the labor movement if they do this strike, prevent it from going further, and then take a lesser deal that's on the table? And I genuinely don't know the answer. The key piece is that they had Ford scrap the legislation he had to back down when Unifor joined them. That's definitely a big win. That is definitely a huge win. I'm very cynical. It's turning off momentum when it's the highest. I think they'll end up with a bad deal for it. Yeah, Nick, I mean, I'm just learning about this stuff right now. That's kind of my initial reaction. I'm certainly not I talk about this stuff often. I'm certainly not a fucking expert in the labor movement or like what the labor movement in Ontario can and can't do. I don't want to start lecturing people that are out there striking workers about what they should and should not be doing. It felt like on Friday and over the weekend, the sense of like that they had a sense of momentum, that they had a sense of like it seemed like there was a popularity behind the movement. They were turning people against the Ford government. And, I'm just some dipshit. And the last thing I want to do is start lecturing striking workers, lecturing union members about what they should be doing. I would have liked to see it continue. I hope they get the deal that they're asking for. I don't think they should settle for anything less than what they're asking for. Hey, Oscar, what's up? If they penalize striking like that, especially, like you got to show the fucking government when they make these decisions that's going to cost them. That is going to cost them. Everyone smarter than me seems less happy than I am. It's like, I hope they get the deal they're asking for. I really hope they get the deal they're asking for. That's the main thing. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here on my Twitch stream and tell union members and union leaders what they should be doing, but I really want them to get the deal that they're asking for. I mean, because it's not even about like QP and about their deal. It's about the conditions that working people in Canada and in the West in general are being forced to exist under right now, right? And we need a militant labor movement. If we ever want to have any kind of like, put any kind of a dent in this what seems to be this like, this path of just nothing but decline and further this slide into fascism and more gig economy bullshit, less labor protections, less benefits, less sick days. It just seems like we're going in that direction. And even in terms of the climate, right? We need a militant labor movement that is capable of grinding this country to a halt. It's not even just about this specific incident with QP and with the deal that they're making. And I think that was the hope, is when you see that kind of like action happening, that it can snowball into something that's even more powerful, that's even more of a powerful and militant labor movement in this country. Is there going to be enough will to pick all the strike talk up again in a few weeks if the Ford government continues to negotiate in bad faith? It feels like the moment was now. I will say that's definitely how it feels to me. That's definitely how it feels to me. Random dipshit with a Twitch stream, who is not a labor organizer by any stretch. Although I would sure like to be in a union, because I routinely get fucked by the gig economy, content creation economy as well. You're not random. I mean, I'm kind of random. I'm a little bit random. It's a long simmering and slowly building anger. I don't think it's going anywhere. I got the sense that they're serious about holding them accountable at the bargaining table, and they directly answered yes to potential strike action if not met in good faith. You're verified on Twitter for now. For now. Yeah, well, I hope that's right.
That he would rescind Bill 28. This morning, Doug Ford announced that he would rescind Bill 28. I know there might be a little bit of doubt about that, but we haven't confirmed.
That's a big win right there. That is a big win, regardless of any hesitancy that any of us might have. See, this is the thing, is like, it was really exciting to see this over the weekend and not be really inspired by it.
The energy moving across this province.
This guy is so fucking cool.
Thank you to all of you for your kind welcome. We were a little late, I'll fill you in why, but I want to be clear about something.
By the way, if someone could, I would really appreciate if someone could gift Nick Sauce a sub. Some kind and generous chatter, if you can gift Nick Sauce a sub, it'd be very much appreciated.
There's only one group of workers. There's only one group of leaders who are leading the struggle we are in. It is the school board workers, QP members, ECEs and educational assistants, and school
You can count on me
secretaries
and
and
have good old Rob
custodians.
to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Prada. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Union thug Fred Hahn. That's right. Very dangerous individual. Look at this guy. Very scary, dangerous individual.
They are the ones who are standing up and fighting back and inspiring all of us to ask ourselves the question, when is enough enough? And we have answered that question. We know that we cannot have a government that legislates an entire collective agreement, tries to remove our rights under the Constitution, tries to set aside the Human Rights Code, tries to set aside the Labor Relations Act. This is what we say enough is enough. We were delayed in joining because we were meeting with other heads of unions. More will come on that, friends, but let me tell you this, a sneak peek. Yesterday was the beginning. It is not the end. We will build resistance. We will bring others to this resistance. We will keep going until the Ford conservatives understand they must withdraw and repeal Bill 28.
So that's me. So they did that. That seems to be done. The question is now: is QP going to get the pay increase and what they were asking for? That's the question. You know, that is the question.
They must respect our human rights code! We will bring others in our communities who are already supportive of these actions. We will keep moving. We will keep building because we know when we stand together and when we fight together, we will win together!
I mean, that's pretty good stuff. And I think, yeah, Biggerwig just said something that resonated. Would prefer a win that wasn't just, okay, now they're not doing the explicit fascist shit to us now, but I guess we'll see. I think that's probably the best stance to have on this, right? Just kind of like a wait and see. Let's wait and see where this goes. Yeah, I worry that the goal of the unions was just to repeal the bill. I want to see the workers get their deal. I would really like to see that as well. Charisma has nothing to do with policymaking. We'll see what his staffers are like. Yeah, that's a good point as well. That's a good point as well. Did you already watch the announcement? No, we watched a couple of clips and we've been talking about the results of the announcement, Margotron, but we didn't watch the whole thing. I saw that you sent it right now. Like now they're back to where they were before, which is not a good place. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's really tough because I know that like continuing that strike was going, people were going to be really angry. But it's like the way it was looking like it was going on Friday is that people were angry and that anger was being correctly funneled towards the Ford government, right? It was being correctly funneled towards where it should be, the people not giving these workers what they're asking for. And I understand that people are concerned, like if we keep this going, people are going to be angry and the possibility is they're going to be angry with us. But like that's kind of a possibility in any strike with like public sector workers, right? That's always going to be a possibility. The question is, do they want to just repeal the bill, that Ford bill that legislated them back to work, or do they want to get the deal that they were asking for? I feel like they had popular support to keep going. You know, that's the part that's sort of giving me pause. If they still go on strike with other unions this Friday, if no deal is reached, then I feel better about it. Yeah, I guess exactly. Like we should definitely just wait and see how it goes, right? We should just wait and see how it goes. If the Ford government is actually serious about giving these workers what they're asking for, which I highly doubt they are. Like it's not like Ford's just going to go, okay, fine, you win. We're going to give you what you're asking for. We all know that's not going to happen. So the question is if they're willing to keep going. I'm skeptical of this idea of having spent your leverage. Yeah, me too, Carrier Wave. I don't think that's necessarily true either. I mean, and it's showing also that they're reasonable and that they're keeping the needs of the kids and the people in schools in mind at the same time. I think we need to hold faith in a historic showing of solidarity between private and public sector unions, and the very direct language of taking more strike action if they don't get what they need. I think that's a good, reasonable way of looking at it, Old Dutch. Absolutely. Like I said right up front, I'm very leery about sitting here on my Twitch stream and lecturing union workers and union organizers and labor organizers and leaders about here's what I would do. You know, it's like they're like, we don't care. Who are you? We don't care. We've got this under control. So I guess we should just see how it goes. See how it goes over the next couple days. I'm just seeing if I can find anything from Ford's statement. I saw Ford was giving this thing about like, my heart breaks. My heart breaks for these little kids not going to daycare. Shit like that. El Sanjito, thank you. Thank you for gassing me up here. You're rallying people in a way via this stream. You're part of an organizing ecosystem. Even as streamer comms, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. You have to be pragmatic for sure, but unpopular strikes are not in a vacuum with people talking about their conditions alongside labor propagandists winning people over. Sure, two-person strikes or general strikes are just not worth doing, but anything between that, you can't let your politics be determined by haters. It's like inverted tailism. It's an interesting point as well. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, Kijiji Genie, like with Doug Ford saying, I'm so concerned about kids in daycare. The guy who stalled on taking the federal government's daycare deal for 6 months is now he's very concerned about these kids in daycare. Of course, no one cares more about conservative than kids in daycare than conservatives. You know, like conservatives like Doug Ford. All the support from the public is hedged on it being Ford's fault. They just need to not be weak when bargaining now. Yeah, definitely.
Students, QP, please, for the sake of our students.
This guy cares so much about
QP,
students.
Please accept this offer. Take strike action off the table and let our kids back in class.
Just pay them. Like I was saying last week, right? Just pay them. This thing of framing the QP as the ones that are keeping kids out of schools, if you just pay them what they're asking for, pay people a living wage. Even people that, even like conservative propagandists are trying to like, you know, frame this being, oh, these are not even low paid workers. They don't make it like most people in this union, these QP workers in custodians, librarians, education assistants, they're not making enough money to afford housing. Just pay them. If you want kids back in class so much, if it's so important, pay them what they're asking for. Just pay them what they're asking for. It's easy. I keep framing it as this illegal strike. You're making liberal leaders look like fucking militant labor activists. That's how inept the Ontario PC press is. Supporting an illegal, never-ending strike. Oh, it's illegal. Like, you literally made it illegal with this legislation. You're making John Fraser, MVP for Ottawa South, look like a militant labor organizer. How come your liberal media is so fair to the conservatives? I guess that's just like what the Canadian media establishment is about, right? That's what that's what being bipartisan or nonpartisan is, or impartial. That's what it is. They're obsessed with this idea of like impartiality, and that means being nice to the conservatives. That's what that means. And never betraying any moment where you give off a sense that you support liberal ideas or progressive ideas, or that you would support the labor, that you would dare to support the labor movement. That's what it means to be impartial in our media establishment. It means being nice to conservatives. It's a deeply reactionary neoliberal backwater. Yes, it is. Our media loves the status quo. That's right. Our entire media class is just status quo stenographers, right? When it comes to conservatives like Doug Ford, when it comes to like the police departments around the country, where the security establishment, the national security establishment, they just write down they go to the little press conferences, they write down their little notes about what the police and what the politicians are saying, and then they write it up in their newspaper. Do you want to actually, this is a funny way to pivot to something that I wanted to talk about. Do you want to see exactly, this is like a perfect summation of our media establishment. This is what our media establishment is like. Here's Sean O'Shea from Global News. Says, this man is just disgusted. Sean O'Shea from Global News says, in my 35 years in Ontario, I have never seen so few poppies being worn at this point before Remembrance Day. We live in a busy downtown neighborhood. There was a sea of people that Saturday. I think I counted 10 on lapels and mine. Sad. Can't blame COVID-19. Boxes are everywhere. This is our media establishment. They're out in the fucking town square writing little notes about who's wearing poppies and who's not wearing poppies. Not enough people are wearing poppies. This is devastating. This is our media establishment. I couldn't think of a better example. I couldn't think of a better example of like what the Canadian media establishment, what their values are. This guy's like snitching on people. He's in the town square writing down who has poppies and who doesn't have poppies and snitching on them. Honoring veterans. That's what poppies are, right? That's what it is to wear a poppy. You're honoring the veterans. Honoring veterans isn't the same as endorsing war. I spent a month reporting from Ukraine this summer. There, the country's under a bombardment. Yet, Sean, I don't see you wearing the exclusive Ukraine flag-colored poppy. Interesting. Very interesting. You say you support Ukraine. You can't find it within yourself to find a blue and yellow poppy to wear. Oh, that's interesting, Sean. That's very interesting. Civilians are being attacked with missiles. Soldiers are defending their country and dying. Sacrifice is present day, not distant past. What does that fucking have to do with wearing a poppy today, Sean? To recognize the sacrifice of World War I. We're honoring, because it's all part of our fake national identity, right? World War I is like when Canada kind of officially on the international stage became like a real country. Because a bunch of our kids were sent to die in this completely pointless, disgusting, barbaric war. We sent a bunch of our kids over there to die for no fucking reason. For no reason whatsoever. To go through absolute hell. We send them to die there, and we honor their sacrifice. Right? Because they sacrificed themselves not to accomplish anything in this war, but to help create Canada's fake national identity. Right? And that's exactly why I do not wear a poppy and will not wear a poppy. Where's my reply? My replies are already getting deboosted. My replies are already getting deboosted, folks. Oh no, it's up here. I'm being shadow banned. I'm being shadow banned here. Also, supporting veterans is not even the stated purpose of Remembrance Day. It's about memorializing dead soldiers, not veterans. Yeah, and it's like we have spat in the face of like all these the kids that were meant to die in this war. The whole point is that we're supposed to never forget their sacrifice. And how many other wars and imperialist wars of aggression around the world in the global south have we supported since that time? You know, which is an absolute disgrace to their sacrifice. We say never again. Never again are we gonna put kids through that, and we do. We put kids through that every day. What was Canada up to in Korea? You know, Canada may be the good cop in terms of America, along with America and the sort of global Western imperialist hegemony. We've still supported imperialism. We've supported Western imperialism for the last century since that time. But I asked him, it's okay. And it's funny, he says, and zero likes, by the way, on this. 0 likes. You know what? Here you go, Sean. Just to show how gregarious I am. Look at this. There you go. There you go. Says, I was going to ask you the same thing, but having watched the 60 Minutes piece last night on social media stupidity, is probably the same thing, the China thing that we were watching. I was going to ask you the same thing, but having watched the 60 Minutes piece last night on social media stupidity and anger mongering, I shall refrain. No likes on that one. But this is our Canadian media establishment. They're this hall monitor ass shit. Going to the town square and snitching on people that aren't being patriotic enough and aren't supporting the troops and veterans enough. Getting my brain rot from 60 Minutes to own the left. Yeah. I am offended that people aren't wearing this tiny fake flower. There's Putinist chaos agents everywhere. It's true. It's true. But yeah, it's true. Even our friend Arachnozak. Says an Irishman crying about not seeing poppies. I've seen everything. The guy says bot with fake's name. Bot with fake name talks about crying. You never handled Theo Moudakis. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that's a reference to. Folks, he's even going after our friend Arachnozak. He's calling him a bot. Because, of course, these people think that anytime anyone criticizes them online, it's because Putin sent them there. Putin sent them. Putin sent this guy to make fun of me for crying about poppies. He's going to sick a political cartoonist on Arachnozak. Anyway, I couldn't think of a better example of our complete dog shit, subservient, bootlicking, pathetic, decorum obsessed, supposedly impartial media class than Sean O'Shea crying about not enough people wearing poppies. We get this every year. Remember 2 years ago at the beginning of the show is our friend Dean Blundell. Friend of the stream, Dean Blundell was getting mad at me about the poppy stuff. Every fucking year, there's some liberal that has an absolute meltdown about poppies. And about poppy. It was Dean Blundell criticized our friend Davide Mastracci for not wearing enough poppies. CBC was simping for landlords again. That's not surprising. Stuff like wearing the poppy and Korean War Remembrance Day is a kind of ritual to replace a kind of international humanism. Honor the troops because of danger and death, but disregard and dehumanize those facing that now in bad countries. And just also when you talk about the Korean War, ignoring the role that Canada played in committing genocide in Korea. You know, we helped America kill 3 million people in Korea. Canadian soldiers were like raping Korean women on farms and stuff. Just horrendous criminal behavior in Korea. And then we celebrate Korean Memorial Day for our role in that absolute barbarity. You know, it's disgusting. The details of why Dean Blundell got fired from the radio should immediately exclude Dean from any respectability politics conversation. I can't remember the exact details of that. I know it's really embarrassing, though, Eric. I know it's something really bad. Infamous homophobe, Dean Blundell. And I know Dean's been on a big thing as well. He's obsessed with the bots as well. Dean is obsessed with the bots also. He thinks that, like, the Canadian anti-hate network are all just like Russian bots as well. These people have just had their brains melted. And then Sean says, like, I watched 60 Minutes last night, told me all about this. And Sean probably thinks we live in a society with no propaganda and that, in fact, he's immune to propaganda. I wish we had a poppy thing to lead to so many hilarious War on Christmas type chud tears. Oh, absolutely. I feel like it should, like, the poppy thing should become popular in America, frankly. It should be. I am a dipshit online, so it must be the bots who are criticizing me. He had a producer come on to talk about a court case the producer was currently a juror on. It was a really serious case. It got very homophobic. I remember Dean was like going after Davide or whatever. And I got like 500 people to comment "shut up, loser" in his mentions. And like Dean, of course, had a meltdown about this because there was like literally hundreds of people just saying "shut up, loser" to him, and he couldn't handle it. He was just like, "This is certainly some kind of like Putin botnet attack here." It was very funny. That's why the Korean War is called the Forgotten War. No one remembers. Anyways, moving on. Remember how scary Vietnam spike pits were? Yeah, most Americans do not know shit about the Korean War and the DPRK, and the massive cluster of contradictory conceptions of what happened there is a wall against that. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's the Forgotten War, but you know who hasn't forgotten it? People in Korea. They certainly haven't forgotten. Nor should they. Yo, Joshy Washi here. I'm a black belt in friendship, so if you want to go for a beer, I'm the guy. Hell yeah, Joshy Washi. Don't touch my drum set. I love it. I love the energy you're bringing to the chat. I love it. Are you aware of the community known as the Friendship Triangle? That's what this community is. And you'd think if you were a black belt in friendship, you would join that community. We're big fans of friendship over here, frankly. Huge fans. Huge fans of friendship over here. I wonder if I can find that Dean Blundell shut up loser incident. Oh. I remember because then he did a whole segment of it on his show. I think because then I talked about it on this show very early on in the stream. Let me see if I can find the clip from it because it was quite funny. Hello, 10,000 sandwiches. And by the way, I'll just remind you that if anyone watching does want to join the community, this very special community known as the Friendship Triangle, and does want to support this stream, and the content that gets created over here, I encourage you to please subscribe to the channel, which costs $5. You can get all the wonderful emotes that are available in this channel. Okay? You can join an incredible, dynamic community of friends. You can become my friend, my personal friend as well, if that means anything to you. Oh, I found it and then I lost it. He was like, everyone on the far left is mentally ill, which I thought it was a normal reaction after being made fun of. I'm trying to find it. I was clicking through my videos and I found it. Oh yeah, here we go. I found it.
So anything that
I think this is the only surviving segment from this clip. But listen, I don't always agree with Dean Blundell or the people that go on his show, frankly. I don't always agree, but I got to admit, sometimes they get it right, okay? Sometimes they say some things that I happen to agree with.
So anything the military does is wrong because they're part of the colonialist structure. Anything that's has to do that's connected to Remembrance Day is really just connected to like white supremacy, militant colonialism, imperialism, blah blah blah. And so the poppy is really just a symbol.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
From being held accountable for the crimes they commit, and then we celebrate the soldiers that help them commit.
See, sometimes you can't educate people.
So anything.
Don't think that you can't educate people on these on these issues. Okay, Dean had the incorrect ideas about this, and then clearly from watching this show, he obviously came around to having the correct ideas eventually.
So anything the military does is wrong because they're part of the colonialist structure. Anything that's
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Really just connected to like
Happy
white
defeat
supremacy,
of the
militant
NWC in
colonialism,
Ontario Day.
imperialism,
Getting
blah, blah,
interrupted
blah.
now.
And so the poppy is really just a symbol that protects these evil institutions from being held accountable for the crimes they commit. And then we celebrate the soldiers that help them commit.
See? People can learn. People can learn, okay? Hang on, let me just say thank you to the people that just subscribed. It was a pretty weak pitch on my part there just now, trying to get people to subscribe. Pathogen7, thanks for the 6 months of tier 1. And thank you also to Comrade Social Distancing for the gifted sub. Thank you to you both. That was a pretty weak pitch on my part, trying to get people to subscribe. I'm going to try harder a little bit longer. The onion. Better at pitching sandwiches, it's true.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Join the DSC.
Thank you, Margatron. Thanks for the 10 months of Prime. Bezos bucks. Very much appreciated, Margatron. Thank you. We just need to hit these libs in the head with the silver hammer they use on the Pope enough times until it works, or they go to a better place. Exactly. See, Dean eventually got it. But the tweet that got us talking about this, though, is just I still can't get over this. It's so funny. When we're talking about our media, our media establishment, what's wrong with it, and why they're deferential to conservatives, it's because it's made up of people like this that think like this. Yeah, Dimitri, I got the posters a couple days ago, and I just framed them, and I showed them earlier, and I specifically mentioned that you had put me onto this, but since you weren't here, I'll go ahead and show you again. These are the 3 smaller pieces that I got. Dimitri recommended. I get from this website, Propagandopolis. And I got some bigger pieces as well that are these. Just framed them this morning. Just went and picked some frames and framed them this morning. I'm very hyped. I really love this shit. I was very happy to get these. Where are the frames from? You know what the frames are from? Michael's. And I went to Michael's this morning and I was immediately triggered. Thinking about our 2 beautiful boys. Our 2 beautiful boys. I walked into Michael's this morning and I was just devastated. Crying on the floor. Crying on the floor of this crafts household items store. And they were like, "Sir, are you okay?" I couldn't even talk to them. Just snot coming out of my mouth. Incoherent. Just completely incoherent. Where are our Michaels? I miss them too. It's weird that our media establishment didn't make them into big, normal figures. We made such a big deal about the fucking Michaels for months. We don't hear from them that much, probably because it would mean they would have to answer some uncomfortable questions about why they were put in Chinese prison in the first place that they probably don't have good answers to. So as soon as they came back home, we're like, "Hey, welcome back, boys. Welcome back, Michaels. We miss you. We love you. Now let's never hear from these guys again. Now we're just going to leave them to go about their family, about their lives. Leave them with their families. We're never going to hear from them again now." It's kind of interesting, isn't it? On my lapel, I wear a poppy for the vets and 2 huge bouquets of red roses for the Michaels. Thank you, G. Kleppy. I just hope it's a Ukraine flag-themed poppy. That's all I ask. They were there on business, okay? They were there on business. You know this. I was just crying on the floor of this place when I picked up the frames to these posters this morning. It was actually a good way of doing things. I bought the posters last night online and then just for pickup, which just prevents you from having to go in and figuring the shit out in the store. That was kind of nice. China had 300K Canadians or whatever to choose from. They just picked the Michaels at random, just completely random. That's right.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
They're there on business. They're going to be in jail somewhere in Latin America within 3 years. Absolutely. Dimitri, thank you so much. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs, Dimitri Ulyanov. Very kind of you. Thank you. I set fire to an entire field of poppies to artificially inflate the value of the fake ones. Such is my dedication to my beloved poppies and capitalism. Thank you, King Window. That's the kind of attitude we like to see. Are the Michaels in Ukraine now? They probably are, yeah. They probably volunteered. They're just so patriotic. They probably volunteered for the Foreign Legion in Ukraine right away. As soon as they got back. The CIA does love poppies. It's true. So I guess we should look at this then too, right? I didn't know if I want to do a whole segment on it or whatever, but let's hear from our friend Chrystia Freeland. Let's hear from our friend Chrystia Freeland, the political mastermind.
I think Canadian families are looking really closely at all of their expenses. I personally, as a mother and wife, look carefully at my credit card bill once a month. And last Sunday, I said to the kids, you're older now, you don't want to watch Disney anymore. Let's cut that Disney Plus subscription. So we cut it. It's only $13.99 a month that we're saving, but every little bit helps. And I think every mother in Canada is doing that right now.
Like people, like average people, how are we going to watch Andor? That's right. That's what I want to know as well. Made $270K last year. That's first of all, yeah. Christy Freeland, who's never worried about money in her entire life, made $270K last year from her salary as a public official, plus speaking engagements, plus whatever else dark money she's taken for all the weird fascist shit that she's up to. Lecturing people about cutting off their fucking Disney Plus subscription, lecturing the poor, because austerity is coming now, right? That's nice as well. Because everything's going so great in our economy already. It's nice that we have we have Chrystia Freeland letting us know that austerity is coming as well. And in our coming election, we can choose between one party that loves giving money to police and Ukraine and austerity, and another party that does the exact same thing. The average person in this country, like the average young person especially, it's just like, I see nothing in the future but further decline. I will never be able to own a home. I will never be able to have a child. The only future that I see is just this increasing series of nightmarish horrors that I couldn't even fathom. That it makes me want to gouge my eyes out to have to think about. This is all we have to look forward to. And we have this fucking lady lecturing everyone about the few things that can entertain you. The few things that like you might be able to pay for to maybe you want to sit down at the end of the day and watch fucking MASH or Andor or The Empire Strikes Back or Captain America Civil War or what have you. And it's like, no, none of that. None of that. Only work. Only work, no entertainment. Just lecturing everyone. Cancel your Disney Plus subscription. That's going to help you. I will for most people in this country who will just never be able to own a home in their entire lives. The planet is literally dying. The planet is literally dying while Chrystia and her friends double and triple down on natural gas extraction and car culture. and global imperialism. And she's like, just cancel your Disney Plus subscription. Why does she hate Andor so much? I don't know, Matt. I don't know. Or let your kids see the parents on Bluey who actually can actually spend time with their kids. That's the crazy fantasy world of Bluey. When the parents in Bluey actually have like time and energy to like spend time with their children and go to the world of imagination with them. Yeah, cancel Disney Plus. Don't eat avocado toast. Don't drink Starbucks. It's all your fault that you're broke. That's right. That's why you can't afford a home. It's because of Disney Plus. Not because any of the economic decisions that me and my friends have been making over the decades and over the generation. Even the father in Bluey is absolutely whipped sometimes. I do say it's like it does set, Bluey does set very unrealistic expectations about that kind of thing. Sometimes you do have to say no to your kids. That's true. Bluey has my son believing I'm an unlimited fountain of energy who should play silly games all day. You got to get to the real world, kids, okay? Jesus. I bought a latte and ruined my chance to be a millionaire. That's it. It all feeds into this whole idea that the reason that we're miserable is because of our own personal decisions. It's our fault. Because we haven't been responsible enough. We've taken too much credit card debt. We've bought too much stuff. We're in too much debt. Who encouraged us for that, though? Who encouraged us to go into credit card debt? That's the whole promise of the neoliberal era. This is a recent invention. And then they wag their finger at people. They wag their finger. Why are you in so much debt, sir or madam? You've been buying too much some nice things for yourself. You've been getting too many treats. The whole economy is built on it. Yes. Next will be don't use disposable diapers. Back in my day, we'd shit on nylons and our mothers would wash them. Yeah, that's the next big luxury that's going to be canceled. Elon flushing $44 billion down the toilet is my fault somehow. Yeah, you've got to bail me out on this. You got to bail me out now from this fucking terrible... I tried to make a meme business decision and then it caught up with me. And if you can't make your budget work, the state will just euthanize you for free. That's right. If you cancel your Disney Plus subscription, it's still not enough to get you in the black. You can simply get state-assisted suicide. Also, why aren't you spending money into the economy? Yeah, that's right. Why aren't you buying more stuff at the exact same moment? At the exact same time. People aren't buying enough stuff. You got to buy more stuff. What's going on? Back in my parents' day, they buckled down, worked 35 hours a day, didn't buy fancy lattes, and just bought their home in cash at 18 years old. That's right. You had a fucking union job at the box factory and got a home at 27 for like $35,000, which is now worth like $750,000. Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't people doing that? Come on. Going back to the Mike Harris welfare diet. Yeah, good to see there's a lot of separation between our austerity-obsessed conservatives in Ontario and our austerity-obsessed liberals in the federal government. Back in my day, the government gave me a house coupon for being a special little boy. You know, it's the finger wagging by these mediocre people. Mediocre. They're mediocre. Yeah, and credit scores didn't exist. It goes back to what we were saying before, right? Where did all these factories, where did all these union jobs go? It's China's fault that we can't get a good union job right out of high school and afford a home a few years later. And comfortably take care of a family of 4 or 5. Why did China do this to us? Why did China do this? My grandfather's brother-in-law was literally the factory's janitor, and he has a shitload of money. How? I mean, that's the thing. How is that there is something called the Soviet Union? there was something called the Russian Revolution that scared the shit out of Western capitalists. They were like, oh man, we're going to go the route of the Romanovs unless we start giving some concessions to working people. And lo and behold, that created this magical thing that people like Chrystia Freeland fetishize called the middle class. None of this would exist without Lenin, without Stalin, dare I say, and without the Russian Revolution, without the Soviet Union. As much as these same people, Chrystia Freeland spent her whole career demonizing the Soviet Union, and talking and trying to turn Ukraine into this right-wing nationalist experiment, right? Talking about how the Soviet citizens of Ukraine are these like the non-Ukrainians. They're the fake Ukrainians. The real Ukrainians were the right-wing diaspora Ukrainians who hated communism and worked with the Nazis, right, Chrystia? And they fetishize this mythical time of the middle class, which wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the Soviet Union. That's the reality. Because we see a lot of like Western leftists as well and Western anarchists who would talk shit about the Soviet Union and fetishize people about FDR and the New Deal. It's like, what the fuck do you think the New Deal come from? Like, even if you don't think that the Soviet Union was perfect, the Soviet Union had a huge impact on working conditions in the West. You know, back when there was actually class consciousness for a little while in these cursed countries, in Canada and the United States, which of course just does not exist whatsoever right now. Now we have negative class consciousness. Because of the Soviet Union, we actually had class consciousness in our culture for a little while, which led to huge benefits and huge gains for working people. I've been getting that from a guy I know convinced the New Deal was purely elite-led. The elites wanted to overthrow FDR because of the New Deal. That was the business plot. The West was like, we'll do what the USSR does, but only for the whites. That'll show them. And even then, it didn't go far enough. But yeah, that's true. Right? We used to have class consciousness in our culture. You know, that was a result of the Soviet Union. And now we have this. Let me see if I can find the tweet that I wanted to talk about. And now we have this. You know, America, there used to be class consciousness as a result of the Russian Revolution, as a result of the Soviet Union that Chrystia Freeland spent her whole life demonizing and trying to overthrow. And now there's this. Now instead of class consciousness, there's this.
So I'm here at Starbucks in Trumbull, Connecticut. It's not just any old Starbucks. This one has been in the news quite a bit because of how bad the drive-through line is. During busy periods, and even right now, the line only holds about 15 cars, and so it spills out onto this major road here. And so the town decided to take action. Did they recommend reconfiguring the drive-through to make it more efficient? Did they even suggest closing the drive-through altogether and just having people park in this massive parking lot and walk inside? No. They voted on and approved a resolution to simply order the Starbucks workers to work faster. I wish I could make this up. This is your brain on car culture. All these people would rather idle in their vehicles and wait in line instead of just parking and going inside. It's the illusion of convenience. There's probably like 2 people in line inside right now.
This is a country, this is what we now that the Soviet Union doesn't exist, this is what happens. This is a country with negative class consciousness. This is when are we going to admit that like Western liberal democracy, Western style capitalism is just a failed experiment? This is not a country, like look at this clip and ask yourself, is this a country that deserves to continue to exist? And I think you'll know the answer. No, it's not enforceable. I just don't even understand like what is the enforcement mechanism. It's not enforceable. It's just they sent a strongly worded letter. They put together a committee to vote on this and recommended sending a formal letter urging the store to pick up the pace. What I'd like to recommend is that we send a formal letter saying we feel they're not adequately moving people through the line, and during peak hours, they should develop a plan to allow people to put an order in and move ahead in line to deliver to relieve the backup on White Plains Road and in the parking lot. So they sent a sternly worded official letter. Incredible. I would love to see a balkanized USA in my lifetime. Well, it's like we're getting to election day tomorrow. I think this might be something we will see, Arachnozak. By the way, we showed your tweet. We featured one of your tweets earlier, Arachnozak, because that guy was getting mad at you about poppies and calling you a bot. We looked at that earlier, talking about Canada's dog shit media class. Send a letter to Schultz and tell him to hire more workers. Of course, that was never an option, right? That was never an option. Is the rise of China going to help bring back class consciousness to the West? No, I honestly think it's hopeless. Honestly. I mean, say nothing about the boomers. Obviously, for them, they're like, there's no helping them. There's no saving them. But even young people that are like, might tell you or might tell themselves that they have some level of class consciousness, they're all like, China bad. Right? All these people are like, China bad. Then you can't. So it's like even people that like should realize they should have some sense of internationalism. They should look at a place like China and realize that we can learn from what China is doing, learn from the amazing progress that China has had over the last several decades, learn from socialism with Chinese characteristics, and ask ourselves how we might kind of implement some of these changes in our own culture. And all these people say, China bad. The very people that could benefit from it. The very people that are getting fucked over by Western-style capitalism and neoliberalism. What's up, Lost Sue? Hello. So I don't know. No, I don't have a lot of confidence. Like these are countries, we're talking about Canada or the United States, with negative class consciousness. Not even no class, literally negative class consciousness. We're all the crabs in the bucket. And the moment one of the crabs starts to climb up, he's like, get back in here, asshole. Get back in here. Can't trust anything China says, but you can trust anything bad said against them, of course. And of course, now America is looking to hand political power back to the Republicans who want to pivot away from Russia into even more forceful confrontation with China. And the Democrats have been like, no, we hate China too, though. They're like competing with each other to say who can hate China more. And that's the selection people have in this like democratic election. The boomers have fucked us. It's true. I feel like I can only trust you now, Rob. Pam, thank you for this. Is the attitude that I like to foster in this community, Pam. I trust you too, Pam. I trust Pam. And we should all trust Pam Palmater as well. But that's the attitude that I like to see in this community. You know, you can trust me. Obviously, we've learned that a lot of our friends and colleagues are not immune to propaganda, but if you watch this stream like Pam's been doing, you will be immune to propaganda. You have trustable shirts. That's right. And I'm wearing one of the TRRS shirts today. The official TRRS shirt, merch I'm wearing right now. How could you not trust this face? That's right, Biggerwig. Thank you. I'm not immune to propaganda, especially Rob's propaganda. Folks, would I lie to you? Look at me. Trust me, buy my merch. Thank you, Brandon. I agree with that unironic statement that you just made. Look at this face, folks. Look at this. Glasses make an imprint on my eye. Look at this. You can trust this face. Would I lie? Look at this face. Is that a face that would lie to you? Come on. You look like a TV evangelist. I'm already trusting you. That's great. Good. To be fair, after watching your interview with Aaron Good over the weekend, we were fucked long before the boomers going back to Truman and before. That is true, Dan. There's been a decades-long process of the fucking. I'm going to have Aaron Good back on here. That was a great interview with Aaron Good. The hat hair makes you look relatable. Exactly. And I am. But Greed02, you say, I'm already trusting you. You know how you can prove that. You know how you can back up that statement. Okay? There's trust, and then you can demonstrate the trust in tangible ways. Okay? You know? The sub goal is not going to fill itself. I've been going through Aaron's podcast episodes, really great. Yeah, and it's like the stuff he's been doing with Ben Norton is really great as well. Like some sort of a trust fund. There we go.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Alana. Thank you for the gifted sub. Hey, Pam, while you're here, Pam, do you want to talk about like the American elections tomorrow? Are you following that at all? I'm doing a big election spectacular. And if Pam, if you want to call in and talk about the Republicans or whatever, I'd be happy to have you call in for a little bit. Thank you very much, Alana, for the gifted sub. Look at that. I'm getting in a big A-list guests already.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Trusting Rob for 14 months.
Thank you, GMO Radio. With the 14 months of Tier 2, thank you, GMO. Hell yeah. Yeah, I got to get Aaron to come back. Maybe there's some kind of like video we can watch now. I've been hooting and hollering and ranting and raving now for an hour and 15 minutes. Brandon says, definitely do an election special. I think there are very few political streamers who will be, so it's a good strategy to gain some viewership. Why do I think, Brandon, every fucking comment you make is designed to like you're doing this, like you're doing, definitely do an election special, like you're doing that voice? Why do I read every one of your comments like that? I swear I can go back through all your comments. And if I do read them in that voice, it's going to make sense. The world is ending, folks. Give Rob your money. I'd give some if I had any. Why is that? I've been reading one like that for ages. Oh, goodness. You know, yeah, I've been ranting and raving for a long time. Maybe you can find some kind of like video to put on for the next hour or so. How about that? I've gone through all the tweets that I wanted to look at. That impression sounds perilously close to Rob's impression of me. That's true, Carnova. That's true. Let's see here. Let's see what Breakthrough News has for us. By the way, I saw, talking about election specials, not that anyone else is going to be watching any other election specials other than this one, obviously. But I did see Eugene Puryear is doing an election special with Sam Sachs on Means TV. That should be pretty cool. Did you hear about the guy in Philly who ate a lot of chicken? I did hear about that, and I know there's a chicken guy backlash now as well. There can be no one can do anything without causing a backlash. Even a guy who's just like, come watch me eat chicken, and somehow convinces people to come and watch him eat a rotisserie chicken. It should be just a wholesome, nice thing. And people are like, fuck that guy. I hate that guy. The TRRS Discord provides me with my daily dose of social media after I dump Twitter. Kudos to the community. It is a really wonderful community, isn't it? And I do recommend everyone join the TRRS Discord server. What a bad acronym, TRRS. It's like I'm already saying the TRRS when the T stands for the. So I'm literally saying like the Rob Russo Show Discord. Although I think I determined as well a while ago that TRRS is not even an acronym anymore. It doesn't even stand for anything. It stands for whatever you want it to be. Whatever you want it to mean. Actually, no, cancel that. Not whatever you want it to mean. It's the Rob Russo Show with Rob Russo. TRRS is the hope in a child's heart. That's right. Absolutely right. Okay, so what videos do we got here? I wonder if there's something related to what we've been talking about. What have we been talking about? I already lost it. I already forgot. The really Republican show. Oh, but enough about the Young Turks. Sorry. Just, I had to do it to him. I had to do it to him. I had to do it to him, folks. They do be tough on crime. It's true. They do be tough on crime. Very true. Disney Plus canceled. Now I can afford a car payment. Well, it better be a zero emissions vehicle or else you're canceled as well. Jerk. What else do we got here? Just looking for a video to put on. You know what? Let me just take a 5-minute breather. How about that? Why don't I take a 5-minute breather? I've been talking for 2 hours straight, so I'll just take 5. I'll go get another beverage or whatever. I'll put you on some little audio visual something or other. I'll come back. Then we'll figure out. No, please don't go, Rob. Oh, no. Right, Brandon? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying, Brandon? Let me just take a little interlude, okay? Little interlude. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, folks. I was so close to just spilling this glass of water all over the place. My hand hit the glass and it jostled, but it didn't tip over. I just almost spilled this big glass of water all over my PC tower. Crisis averted. Crisis averted. It's funny how you always realize how a glass can hold a crazy big amount of water when you spill it everywhere. When it goes all over your computer tower, absolutely. But that should not be legal to hold that much water. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. Big win by the Toronto Raptors last night, by the way. With Pascal sitting. I'm so sad about Pascal Siakam's injury. Big win against the Bulls. Hope to see another one tonight. Fred shutting down all the haters with the 30 piece. I would really love for like recent Toronto Raptors fans to stop speculating about trading Fred VanVleet. It's like he gets injured once and they have the big lineup of Vision 6'9". They have the Vision 6'9" lineup and the people are being like, we don't need this guy. Get him out of there. Trade him. I must ask some of these people to please stop demanding that Fred VanVleet be traded. My goodness. Going to do any COP27 coverage, Rob? You know what? I should do COP27 coverage. You know what? I think that's a great opportunity. Old Dutch. Yeah, last night's win proves the Raps can trade Pascal, of course. Yeah. Always rational sports fans. The most reactionary people. Old Dutch, that's actually a great reminder. I think that would be a great opportunity to bring back on none other than Vijay Prashad. That's right, Carrier Wave. It'd be a great opportunity, I think, COP27 to bring back Vijay Prashad. He was on the show last year to talk about his comments from COP26. And I think COP27 would be a perfect opportunity to bring back our friend Vijay Prashad. My friend and yours. A member of this community. Vijay Prashad. I think that would be a really great opportunity. Close friend even, yes. Absolutely. That's exactly what he is.
Deep hunger.
You know, on that subject, why don't we watch this panel from the International People's Assembly? Maybe that would be good to watch for the rest of the day, wouldn't it? Challenges for the left. With Stephanie Weatherby, with Jeremy Corbyn, with Kelly Mafort, with Vijay Prashad, moderated by Manolo de los Santos from the People's Forum. That could be something. We could watch that, right? That's something we could do. Oh, it's long, though. It's very long. Because I saw that there was a clip from this event. Maybe that's just a good place to start. Do you hear the drilling again? Hear the drilling? Let's hear from Vijay.
In our people, demonstrated by our movements. Manuel was saying in Argentina, the struggles now against things like privatization are much more powerful than even 20 years ago. Cascading protests in Colombia that brought Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez to office. Cascading protests in Sri Lanka that didn't bring a progressive force to office. But nonetheless, the planet is filled, billions of people against privatization. We want more social wages. We want public transportation. We want public education. We want public delivery of water. We want public delivery of electricity. We want public this. We want public that. We want public everything. We want most of our life no longer to be captured by the private sector, by the profit sector. That's a deep and enduring hunger. Fernando has demonstrated the hunger of the people in São Paulo state for publicly controlled water, not for commodified water. So when we ask, what are proposals from the left? In fact, comrades, these are not proposals from the left. These are proposals of the people. The people want this.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Proposals on anybody. The thing
Thank you, James, for the gifted sub. Thank you.
To accompany the mood of the people.
Well, have the Brits forgotten any parties left of the Tories exist somehow? Well, that's not true. That's because when actual leftists took over the Labour Party or tried to, the entirety of the British establishment came together to ensure that they would fail, and that people around in Britain would view the mild-mannered social democrat that was leading this movement as being this like dangerous radical and extremist. And they spent 4 straight years brainwashing people and encouraging them to hold these incorrect ideas. That's why.
Accompany the popular struggles of people. We are not imposing our proposals. We are bringing the proposals of the people, building power around them and fighting against the billionaires. Here's a proposal I want to impose on you. Here's a proposal I am imposing on you. You see, can you imagine this ambition of an actual human being? Elon Musk, whose family made their money in apartheid South Africa. He's not a self-made millionaire. He made his billions on the backs of black workers in South Africa who, under conditions of apartheid, were taken advantage of by his family. That was a down payment for his entire fortune. Elon Musk's ambition is to be the world's first trillionaire. That's his ambition. He wants to be a trillionaire. You see, when are we going to start an international campaign to abolish billionaires? See, we need our movements to start talking about the need to abolish billionaires. 22 billionaires have more wealth than all the women on the African continent. That means 22 men have more wealth than 325 million women.
This man supports women, as do I.
That, comrades, is an absolute abomination. That is an absolute abomination. And these billionaires have taken $37 trillion of their so-called their wealth, which is actually our wealth. They've taken $37 trillion and they've put them in illicit tax havens. There's enough social wealth in the planet to bring decency and dignity for people. It's not true, as the economists keep saying, that scarcity defines our
I think
world.
women should have all of the money. I agree.
Scarcity is not present in our
More
world.
women
We have
billionaires.
abundance.
That's the point I
We
think
have
that he's trying to
abundance.
make.
Our problem is we have an abundance of wealth, but the people have a scarcity of power. We need to build our power to shift the balance of forces of who gets to determine what we do with that wealth. What do we want to do with that wealth? Make sure every child around the planet can open a tap and drink water from that tap. That is the proposal of the people. That is the proposal.
Okay, you know what? I think this is from 3 years ago. You know, Dan recommended a video that I think could be cool to watch. Just from 2 days ago, I talked about our friend Aaron Good and our friend Ben Norton, both of whom have been guests on the show, and the work that they've been doing together. Here's this video.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Norton.
With Ben and Aaron about how the CIA, how Wall Street gave birth to the CIA, which is probably extremely interesting. And we talked earlier, I mean, it ties into what we were talking about earlier about like social democracy and FDR and the New Deal and all this stuff, and how some people think that this was like this uniquely American thing or that was elite led. Not at all. And in fact, like FDR had created many enemies in the elite community, in the business community, and in the intelligence community who worked against him. And who, when their plot failed, they had an actual coup plot in place to overthrow FDR. And when that failed, they simply worked together to create this like deep state in American politics, which would slowly chip away at the New Deal and ensure that any president would be there doing their bidding first and foremost. And when someone like John F. Kennedy came along, who didn't want to do their bidding, who tried to take the reins of the CIA and this burgeoning deep state, this burgeoning intelligence community, we all know what happened then. Right? So let's watch this video. I think this should be interesting. I got to stop hooting and hollering. They even took down deep state warrior Donald Trump. That's right. And Richard Nixon as well. Let's go.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Norton, and this is the Empire and Deep State series that I, at Multipolarista, am co-hosting with the American Exception podcast, hosted by friends of the show, Aaron Good and Seamus McGinnis. And as always, we are talking today about the book, American Exception, Empire and the Deep State, by the historian and political scientist, Aaron Good, the co-host of this program. And we are now in part 12. We've gone through many different theories and analysis of imperialism, of the deep state, of different, political science analysis of where power lies, what the state is. We've talked about a lot of that. And today we're basically beginning a kind of new part in the series, which is the history focus section. I'm personally very excited about this. This is where I really, I'm most interested in these topics. I really cut my teeth on this stuff. So, we're going to begin at the beginning, as they say, and we're going to start here with a history of the U.S. national security state and the deep state that was constructed after World War II. And this is based on chapter 6 in Aaron's book. And for the most part, from now on, a lot of these episodes are going to be built around history. We're going to talk about theory and stuff, but largely around history. And Aaron, this chapter is one of my favorite chapters in the book. It's a brilliant chapter, and it has a great name. It's An Imperial Colossus is Born. an imperial colossus is born. You're talking about the creation of the U.S. empire and the national security state after the end, or not even before the end, toward the end of World War II. And you talk about
absolutely, Dimitri.
You can talk about the different institutions that are involved, but specifically you talk about the key role of the Council on Foreign Relations acting as an arm of Wall Street, of big corporations, big capitalists, and their plans to create what they called an American century. That's important because when we talk about the neoconservatives today and their project for the new American century, they're of course acknowledging the original American century. But this history is not very well known, even though this history has probably these historical events that we're talking about in the 1940s are probably some of the most influential historical events in the past 100 years that fundamentally shifted global politics and economics and created the world we live in today. So let's just start by talking about how the post-World War II U.S. empire emerged. And I'll just open this kind of generally with this ridiculous quote, this famous quote from a British court historian, John Robert Seeley. He famously claimed that the British acquired their...
The American century is deteriorating. That's the thing. They're desperately trying to create a new American century, and it's like, it's not happening. Quit trying to make the new American century happen. It's not going to happen. As we've been covering endlessly on this show, all that's happening is further decline of they're losing their grip on this endless hegemony that they've had for decades now, this unipolarity. And the more desperately they try to grip onto that, the more it slips through their fingers. And it's kind of an entertaining thing to watch if you've been following these phenomena for years. It's kind of an entertaining thing to watch. It's also a dangerous situation for everyone, though, because we don't know how desperate these people are going to become.
Empire in a fit of absence of mind, claiming that it was just a mistake. It was an accident that the British created their empire, and that's exactly how the U.S. treats its empire. Oh, the U.S. didn't actually it didn't have a plan to create an empire. It's all just an accident that this happened the way it did. But of course,
we just lucked into it. We just fell ass backwards into global hegemony.
Post-war American empire was created.
I think it's important to understand that the U.S. has always been an oligarchy of sorts. There were democratic elements of the U.S. political system and U.S. society, but there has been, there's also top-down power in American history. And there's a great quote. So FDR said to Colonel House in 1933 in a letter. Colonel House was the famous advisor to Woodrow Wilson and a guy who'd been around the higher
bumbling into empire
in the early part of the 20th century. FDR writes to him, "The real truth is, as you and I know, that a financial element in the larger centers has owned the government ever since the days of Andrew Jackson." So that's coming from FDR himself, who is the president of the United States, and a guy who is connected to the elites. His family has money made from opium trade, the Delano family, the China trade, as it was called. So he would know. And he's pointing out that this country has been owned and run by wealthy people since the days of Andrew Jackson, which is an interesting statement. May have to do with the fact that the end of the Second Bank of the United States leads to, in effect, the power of Wall Street. Wall Street becoming the main financial center of the United States without really any competition. Philadelphia was where the Second Bank of the United States was located, and it was a more national bank, more nationalized bank, still with some private ownership and kind of a weird structure when you think about it. But still, when the bank ends, Andrew Jackson, can present himself as a guy who's like the anti-banker type person.
And I just want to remind people as well that I enjoy watching this content on here, but please subscribe to Multipolarista. Subscribe to Aaron's podcast, American Exception, and buy Aaron's book as well, which I actually need to do also. I really need to pick up American Exception as well, because all of the things that we talk about often are covered so in depth in this book. Aaron's so great at talking about this stuff. So please subscribe to these podcasts and these YouTube channels as well.
But it really helped to further empower financial elements that had no connection to the government at all. So private finance really benefited from the end of Andrew Jackson. And so FDR can allude to the fact that an oligarchy emerged around the time of Andrew Jackson, and he was accurate. So in the case of the U.S. after World War II, oligarchy really takes the wheel in terms of steering U.S. grand strategy. They establish this War and Peace Studies project, which we've talked about, mentioned a few times before now. But this is right after the Soviets invade, the Germans invade Poland in 1939. Very shortly, this whole thing begins. So the U.S. hasn't even entered the war, and It's not really certain that they're going to. They're not making statements to that effect. But these guys already get to work, and they more or less establish it's the War and Peace Studies Project under the State Department auspices, but it's really undertaken by some amount of State Department personnel, but mostly the Council on Foreign Relations, and it's all paid for by the Rockefeller Foundation. And so this is Standard Oil money. And the Council on Foreign Relations is a Rockefeller organization as well. Very Eastern establishment, kind of Anglophile, connected to the roundtable groups of like Milner and Cecil Rhodes in England, copied on that model. It's a really British imperialist kind of mindset, which makes sense because these guys are they have a transnational commercial imperialist, mindset themselves. It's the upper echelons of U.S. capitalism. And you see here on the these images are taken from the actual report themselves. Vice president at the time was Allen Dulles. Okay. And that's probably the real face of the American empire in its early days and the way it was constructed. And he's a person who worked for the U.S. government, the OSS, during the World War I or during World War II. And he was a part of a diplomatic delegation to Versailles in World War I. So he goes way back in the establishment, has relatives who were two relatives who were Secretary of State. His brother goes on to become Secretary of State. So this is this connection between the government and financial elites, and somebody like Dulles is more or less a leg man for these people. And he wrote,
if Allen Dulles is involved, though, it can't be that bad, right? Great American patriot Allen Dulles. Pretty much as soon as his name's on something, that's something that you can trust and that's going to have total non-nefarious goals and is going to be totally A-okay, right? Great guy. Good old Allen Dulles. Listen, he was on the Warren Commission and, gave the truth to people about what happened during the Kennedy assassination. It doesn't matter that he was deeply implicated in the Kennedy assassination in the first place and that he had no business being on the Warren Commission in the first place. It doesn't matter, okay? He's got an airport, exactly. It is the seal of being good stuff, exactly. So that's why we need to be scared. We need to be very cautious about this kind of conspiratorial thinking that Ben and Aaron are getting into here. You don't always trust Big Al. That's what they say. That classic saying that we all know.
Sections of this report, which are still classified on security and sovereignty, and people speculate that this was where he calls for the creation of something like a CIA to be able to manage these affairs internationally. So this was not.
And Aaron, we should point out also that Allen Dulles was, of course, a Wall Street lawyer who then was brought into the Council on Foreign Relations and then eventually creates the CIA. So his background as a Wall Street lawyer is very important.
Right. The overlap between like what you could call oil intelligence when he was working for Sullivan and Cromwell, but also like working on oil deals and still had a State Department appointment. I mean, this goes back a long time. You used to have a lot of Standard Oil employees in the State Department in general in the late in the Gilded Age in the early 1900s. So this is kind of par for the course. Sullivan and Cromwell, Wall Street law firm, represents the biggest corporate clients in the world. The Dulles brothers are a part of that. And so the main takeaway here is that this whole decision of the U.S. to take on the mantle of global leadership was formulated while World War II was going on in an undemocratic way by very wealthy organizations backed by very wealthy people. And they plan out much of the structure of the post-war world order. They argue for things like the IMF, what becomes the IMF, what becomes the World Bank later, what becomes the United Nations, probably what becomes the CIA, although those reports are still classified. And so these are major pillars of the way the U.S. is going to run the world. And they decided they would go for this. So it definitely
saying the IMF
was not
and the World Bank are
done in a fit of absence of mind.
Tendrils of Western imperialism and U.S. hegemony.
In
what?
Secret, some of it's still secret today. Plan to assert global dominance. So in a way, you could say it's kind of a conspiratorial way to do all this, since it really wasn't debated openly and all that it entailed for the U.S.
You mean there's men in rooms?
No, not a fit of absence of mind. Very much planned by oligarchic elements.
There's men in rooms. That's right. And again, you get into this new Cold War stuff with China and all the aggression with China that's completely bipartisan. Trump ramped up, like there was the pivot to China under Obama. Trump increased it. Biden has increased it even more, trying to destroy the Belt and Road Initiative. It's all so that they can keep their global economic model in place, which is kept in place by the IMF and by the World Bank. That needs to be the only model for development in the global South. The IMF and the World Bank, and the idea that China can offer developing nations in the global South an alternative outside of the World Bank and the IMF, unacceptable to American elites. That's the big no-no, right? That's exactly, and all the propaganda about China, all the China bad stuff, all the nonstop stories. They've defeated COVID, but at what cost? All the genocide stuff on the Tibet and Xinjiang and Hong Kong and wherever else. That's what it's all about. It's all about preserving the ability of America and the West using these institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, and the ability for them to have this iron grip on development in these places. And that's all it's ever been about. And if you've fallen for the China bad stuff, you're just contributing to that. So you got to stop doing that.
Right. And we're talking about the construction of the empire. There are these sort of preceding ideas around things like the Monroe Doctrine and sort of this sense that we have a right to interfere and to control our hemisphere. And that very quickly expands to the world as soon as we sort of
global Monroe
assert ourselves
Doctrine
as a world power.
BJ was talking
and on
to
the
us
flip
about
side,
this.
I think we're talking about history now. Let's call it mainstream, or if you took U.S. history in high school, that version of the story kind of separates out the sort of George Kennan long telegram story from the cultural one, which is that, okay, we had McCarthyism. Oh, there was this anti-communist hysteria, but we kind of keep those siloed off from each other. And I think what we're getting at here is there's a reason why that's maybe obscured. But how does this thinking in the sort of upper echelons, things like the War and Peace Studies Project, get from the public state, or not the public state, but from the sort of early birth of the deep state to the general American culture that controls our political system and what we talk about in our media, and sort of that influence on the greater American experience that this budding empire had?
Well, I think that the main push to present this to the American public, you can see in this quote from Henry Luce in his famous American Century essay. I mean, he writes this whole essay is basically pitching American leadership on the world and how America is going to be this benevolent leader of global free enterprise system and so on. So it doesn't pitch itself at, it says the American century, but it studiously avoids calling itself like empire or imperialist. And then,
and Aaron, explain who Henry Luce is really quickly for people who don't know.
Yeah, Henry Luce is a guy who was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he was the main sort of official publisher with the seal of approval of the overworld of American capitalism, more or less. So he published Time Magazine, Life Magazine, and Fortune Magazine, and he had a very pro-capitalist, pro-American perspective, and he was able to run this media empire in such a way as to promote the values and interests and perceptions and public relations aims of the American oligarchy. So, and a lot of it is kind of pablum for PR purposes, but he slips up in one point here in this essay, and I think kind of gives away some more serious aspects of what he's talking about. He writes, "Our thinking of world trade today is on ridiculously small terms. For example, if we think of Asia as being worth only a few hundred millions a year to us. Actually, in the decades to come, Asia will be worth to us exactly zero, or else it will be worth to us 4, 5, 10 billions of dollars a year. And the latter are the terms we must think in, or else confess a pitiful impotence." And of course, in 1941, this is written in February of 1941. Pearl Harbor hasn't happened yet, but there's an empire. There are empires in East Asia, and Japan is basically is taking them over, and they're Western empires. So they've already taken over French Indochina by this point. And this war machine has its eyes set on the rest of the European empires over there. And those are very valuable, very lucrative, especially Indonesia. People connected to the Council on Foreign Relations knew that Indonesia, West Papua, which is the Dutch East Indies, had a ridiculous amount of gold, for example. And if the Japanese had been allowed to maintain control over that area of the world, they would have become a very rich empire. And a lot of corporate interests in the U.S. would not have been able to make ridiculous amounts of money in the decades after World War II like they have up to the present day. Even the Freeport mine in West Papua is the richest gold mine in the world still today. And we probably don't even know the half of it. They probably obscure how much they actually get out of it. And so this is really what was at stake. It was who was going to own the valuable resources of the world. And this gets packaged as, spreading freedom and democracy in the American way and the free enterprise system, which is quite a euphemism for capitalism. And that's Henry Luce, and that's how it was presented to the American public.
Yeah, and of course, this is very reminiscent of the language that we would see in the 1950s after the victory of the Chinese Revolution in October 1st, 1949, when Mao famously says, "China has stood up, has risen up, overthrown its colonial shackles." And then we saw all of this media noise in the US with the press saying, "Who lost China? How did we lose China?" And clearly, if you lose something, you have to own it before you lose it, right? So the narrative that he's getting at there is that if we don't act and create this global spanning empire, we're going to lose Asia. We're going to lose billions and billions of dollars, which I'm sure if you adjusted it for inflation, it would be, hundreds of billions or trillions today. So, I mean, it's really important to keep in mind that this idea of the US losing China and losing Asia is strictly colonialism. That's exactly how colonialists think. But what's interesting about this, Aaron, is when in your book, when you talk about the role of these Wall Street lawyers and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, this is all Wall Street money working with the State Department to create this plan for a global U.S. empire.
No one freak out.
This plan is being created at the same time that the U.S. government does have what is probably the most progressive government in its history under FDR. And there are people in the administration who actually are against this plan. Especially, you talk a lot about the Vice President Henry Wallace, who is the second most popular politician in the U.S. after FDR, and yet he's been completely erased from history, which is an incredible act of historical erasure. How was this contradiction kind of reconciled, or was it reconciled? How do you have these U.S. corporate elites from Wall Street creating this plan in the State Department for a massive U.S. empire at the same time that you have in the White House progressives who don't want a Cold War and who don't want to create an empire like that?
Well, this, I think, is a case that illustrates the real limits of liberal democracy. It really shows that you cannot have the fundamental basis of a democratic society is that it's the public that controls the state and that it operates in the public interest and the interest of the majority. But you see with this case that even when the U.S. is at its most democratic, there's nothing to stop the oligarchic forces from asserting control of the state and determining the course of history. And at the time that this was happening, because there were progressive elements in the state and because unregulated capitalism had been discredited, they sought to depict this, to couch this in progressive rhetoric that's much more progressive than what the U.S. says today. I mean, famously during World War II, you had FDR talking about the four freedoms. And these were advertised in and posted and promoted in the U.S. as in images by Norman Rockwell. So you can see Norman Rockwell painting here, talking about the four freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. And this was something that people were to fight for, and this was something that the U.S. was saying should apply to the whole world. And freedom from want is quite notable here. This is something that, if you think like progress sort of moves on in a kind of incremental way and so on, you think, well, this freedom from want, this providing material security for people, why is that still out of reach? Why do we still have tens of thousands of people dying every day from preventable diseases and malnutrition that could be eradicated for a fraction of the cost of the Pentagon budget? And you see the conclusion is that this sort of thinking was rolled back and was destroyed in America. And it was useful to mobilize people to support this war effort because it was a good cause, and you couldn't really say make the world safe for democracy after Woodrow Wilson. So there was more that was promised, and I think that Roosevelt was not insincere insofar as he was behind, supported these ideas. Ditto, and even more so for Henry Wallace, his vice president from 1940, after the 1940 election. But even at this time, you had right-wing elements who were, not excited about this, but they didn't want to be contradicting the president and so on. But they put a whole campaign out about the fifth freedom, okay, which is the fifth freedom is the U.S. free enterprise system. So, capitalism does not really fit with these four freedoms, but these guys just, because they have enough money, they can create a PR campaign to just crudely put that out there, okay?
The free market. The free market is the greatest freedom of all. Aaron, come on now. We all know this. So
even at this point,
freedom to exploit.
Exactly. I mean, that's, capitalism is based on that, on exploitation. It's basically that the market,
freedom to buy Twitter,
exploitative market mechanism should prevail through as much of society as possible. And where it doesn't prevail, they kind of want to go after those things: public education, public roads. They'd like to make everything a toll booth, et cetera, because that's just that's the mindset of these people. So this was a contradiction of the time, and it really shows how weak U.S. democracy was even at its strongest point. And there was there were a lot of anti-fascist sentiments in the United States as well, and they were fighting against fascism in World War II. So it was good to have an anti-fascist as vice president. But here's Henry Wallace talking about American fascists. If we define an American fascist as one who, in case of conflict, puts money and power ahead of human beings, then there are undoubtedly several million fascists in the United States. Okay, now that defines so many people in the United States and in the United States power structure. And so Wallace is basically pointing out that these people should probably be considered fascists then and now. And he was very popular. Wallace was very popular, second most popular politician, as you say, in the United States.
Canada and the United States just filled with fucking wannabe fascists.
Eleanor Roosevelt intervened to say that basically
bootlicking
FDR
snitches,
would drop himself from the ticket.
power
if Wallace wasn't
worshipping
the vice president.
losers.
It's a dramatic sort of showdown, and then so they let Wallace become president, or vice president. But in 1944, you have what's called Pauley's coup, where
I don't know. That's a good question,
Florida
Dimitri.
senator, was going to nominate Henry Wallace for the vice presidential position at the Democratic convention, and he gets within 5 feet of the microphone, and then people are alarmed because they know what he's going to do, and so they fake a fire. They say there's a fire, and they got to evacuate the building. And so, because if he'd been able to nominate him that night, he would have won hands down. And so there was a conspiracy by this guy named Pauley, who was the Democratic Party treasurer and a California oil millionaire.
They're still doing that shit to this day.
Scuttled Henry Wallace's vice presidential chances and get him dropped from the ticket, despite the fact that he's extremely popular. And they replace him with Harry Truman. Why do they replace him with Harry Truman? Not that he had distinguished himself in any way, but he hadn't offended anyone, and he said certain things that kind of give you a hint as to his mentality.
Yes, I sincerely believe that if Wallace had taken over for FDR instead of Truman, the world would be a very different place. It's one of those somewhat minor events like the Democratic Convention that is just this like hinge point that sends the entire world off this completely different direction. Even in the 60s, you could still viably advocate for the CIA's abolition. Yeah, now the Democratic Party has CIA agents in the fucking party, in Congress. How's that going?
For example, he said, as a senator, if we see that Germany is winning, we ought to help Russia. And if Russia is winning, we ought to help Germany. And that way, let them kill as many as possible. So that logic is kind of, fitting in terms of describing what the U.S. did in the early years of World War II. Even after Pearl Harbor, they wait to go into Europe until basically the Russians have turned the tide and are marching towards Berlin. And so this reflects what the kind of thinking of Harry Truman. It also reflects the Cold War mentality as well. I mean, it just shows that like they're more concerned about dominance and global dominance than really having peace, especially in Germany or Russia. That they'd rather pit them against each other, which they do in the Cold War. So this was a tragedy. Wallace was really progressive, and his plans were more for the century of the common man. He put out a counterpoint to Henry Luce in a speech called "The Century of the Common Man." And he talks about how this shouldn't be an American century. It should be a century of the common man, where technology in the West is dispersed throughout the world to allow people to develop their societies and solve material, technological problems, and more or less create a just world that kind of conforms to the idea behind the four freedoms. And that would be the way that America could have a leadership position, but a benevolent one instead of an exploitative one. But of course, that wasn't to be.
So on the subject of that Truman quote, I think we see throughout World War II, and I don't want to discount the sort of, I think the American populace itself, obviously there is a fascist element in America prior to the war, and then a lot of people genuinely who at least were aware of what was happening in Germany were joining for the right reasons. And I guess what I'm trying to say is we have to step outside of the sort of Manichaean duality of World War II, of like the US is on the side of good and it's against evil, because ostensibly that's what's happening. But of course, the people who are founding this sort of new plan coming out of it see it very differently. And the real goal is not really to take a side as much as it is to subordinate everybody involved. And so the way that happens in Germany is obviously a lot more of the conventional warfare way, firebombing the industry, except GM factories. You leave those alone, even though they were producing military equipment. And then on the flip side, you have things like Lend-Lease that are subordinating the British Empire by essentially taking away all of their imperial preference trade empire. And that was sort of the new developing way of having a capitalist empire, was to have that sort of unequal exchange set up. And we understood that. And so Lend-Lease was given on the terms that would be taken away. And because we understood that quote unquote free markets really meant that it was our time to take over. And so by the time we get to 1947, somebody like Secretary of State Dean Acheson says there's really only two great powers left. And what he's referring to is the US and the USSR. So by the end of the war, you see all of the European powers that are supposedly our allies are not our equals. And so as the war leads on, as we're saying, this sort of the birth of a new American century comes about. So at what moment would you say that the US deep state, or what you call the imperial colossus, is born?
So it's tricky to put an exact birth date on like a birth certificate of the United States deep state, but Mike Lofgren, who wrote a decent book on the deep state.
One thing too that I really appreciate the work that Aaron does is like the idea that like deep state, when you're talking about American politics, the idea of the deep state became sort of like partisan, and it just became like a Trump thing, right? We talked about how like there used to be space in the like institutional left to like criticize things like the CIA, to even call for the CIA's abolition. And now not only do you have that, but you have people in the Democratic Party just like openly praising the CIA and the FBI. Russiagate was a big part of like expanding this, right? Openly praising these like demonic fucking intelligence agencies. And encourage, like having them join the party, like literally run as Democratic candidates in Congress, former CIA analysts and stuff. And the idea that like talking about this idea of the deep state is this exclusively like Trumpian Republican thing. Yeah, of course, the way that Trump used it was bullshit, of course, because like Trump took a lot of very true things and twisted it around to like be self-serving and to promote himself, right? There was a number of ways that Trump did that, criticizing the foreign policy establishment and the deep state, the wars and these things like that, using it in a way just to benefit himself. But that doesn't mean that this idea doesn't have merit, that there isn't this like, that there aren't these deep political events that go on in American society, that there aren't these very powerful institutions that like operate beyond like partisan politics, beyond electoral politics, that control things like foreign policy and economic policy and these vital things, and the actual people that are in being elected only have these like very minor ability to kind of influence them. This is a very important concept, and I appreciate that Aaron does this work to like illustrate exactly like what these institutions are and how they came about, right? And the idea that liberals have brought like this idea that you can say deep state, talk about the deep state, and immediately just think that you're some like Republican Trump guy. It's ridiculous because these institutions are very real and very powerful and very nefarious. And Aaron has done so much work illustrating that to people, researching it and illustrating it to people exactly how these institutions started, who they are, what their role is, and what they do. It's really important that people understand this. And yeah, like you said, it's like some civil servant that is doing their job is not the deep state just because Trump doesn't like it. But it was another way that Trump would often talk about very true things, and not necessarily for good reasons, for very self-serving reasons, but there would be elements of truth to a lot of the things that he would talk about. And talking about the deep state was one of these elements.
Underplays the criminality of it all. But Lofgren wrote that the attainment of the nuclear weapon was almost certainly the deep state's moment of conception.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
I would dispute that and say it's probably more accurate to describe the atomic bombings as the deep state's birth, well after it was conceived by the War and Peace Studies Project. So they get this idea, comes together.
Intrinsically anti-communist, absolutely.
It's conceived there, and then it violently bursts onto the world scene with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So these nuclear bombs were totally gratuitous. I think Peter Kuznick has done perhaps the most exhaustive work on this. That's accessible, very accessible.
Yeah. Ben Garrison, Alex Jones, and Donald Trump have done a great job of obscuring the actual nature of the deep state. Yeah, they think the deep state is like fucking Planned Parenthood or something. Or like there's this idea that on the right, they think that the left has all this power. You saw Elon sharing tweets about this the other day. The left has everything. They've got all these NGOs and all these powerful organizations, and we have nothing. Just a complete inversion of the actual reality of things, right? They think that these like random NGOs that are trying to promote equality or trying to promote, social justice or Black Lives Matter, or whatever, that's the deep state, right? And completely obscuring the actual power structures at play that are there. Yeah, because of the narrator. Yeah, because of the conspiracy, right? People think the deep state is vaccines and gay liberation. Yeah. Although worth pointing out the ways that the actual deep state, the CIA, and these intelligence communities,
computer to mark up the size of the account.
The way that the actual deep state does use gay liberation as a wedge and as this kind of tip of the spear of imperialism when they want to go after countries that they don't like. You do see the way that these like social justice issues have been absorbed and weaponized by these like very dangerous institutions. Not to say that we shouldn't support these movements, because we should. We also do need to be aware of the way that these movements for social justice have been weaponized by these very people to be able to serve their own nefarious ends and serve the needs of empire. Thank you for the 100 friend coin, Dimitri. This is what the right historically has done. In fact, Julius Caesar was a reformer who was, in my opinion, rightly praised by the Roman proletariat populace. However, fascists and conservatives have preserved the factual contextualization and hailed the dictator for power than the changes he was using, an inversion of history. And I think, I haven't read this one, but I think Parenti writes about that, right? In his essays, in his work on the assassination of Julius Caesar. Am I correct in assuming that? I don't know. I haven't read that one. But good point, Dimitri, as well.
Festival as well in Untold History of the United States documentary and the book series. The nukes were totally gratuitous, and people like 6 or 7 of those 5-star generals, if I remember correctly, 6 or 7 of them thought they were either unnecessary, immoral, or both. Eisenhower and even Curtis LeMay thought that they didn't need to be done. Japan surrendered when they surrendered because of the Soviet invasion of Manchuria. So those things happened. The Soviets rushed to be able to enter the war as they had promised they would do at like Yalta and Potsdam, and they the last remaining bit of an extraterritorial empire that the Japanese had was in Manchuria, and the Soviets came in same time that the bombs were, right after the bombing of Hiroshima, and before the bombing of Nagasaki, but it's like a day later, right? They sweep into Manchuria and they wipe everything out there. They wipe out the Japanese. The Japanese people lose more in the invasion of Manchuria than they lost in the atomic bombings, okay, which killed a couple 100,000 people.
Jesus.
But the losses in Manchuria were even more devastating. They were a totally defeated empire. The U.S. knew that the Soviet invasion was coming. They did not need to drop a bomb on Hiroshima. They could have waited to see what the invasion would have done, but they wanted to use the bomb, apparently, to teach the Soviet Union a lesson. The co-director of the Manhattan Project, General Leslie Groves, said himself that there was never any doubt in his mind that the real target of the bomb was the Soviet Union from when the project started and on. When there was a cabinet meeting of the Japanese after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the main subject they talked about as they were discussing the option of surrender was the USSR invasion. They didn't really talk about the losses of Hiroshima and Nagasaki much at all. The atomic bomb explanation kind of becomes a convenient myth for both sides. For the Japanese, they have to ask why they didn't surrender earlier and why they surrendered to the Americans and how they could become so close to the Americans if the Americans gratuitously bombed them that way. In reality, surrendering to the Americans instead of the Russians meant that they would keep their oligarchy in place, their ruling class in place. And so this gratuitous bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is really, and the message it sends to the Soviets, which it kind of terrifies them and induces a lot of panic in the Soviet Union at this time. This I think should be seen as the birth of the American deep state, this kind of top-down power that's going to assert itself in violent ways to direct the course of history and to sort of override any sort of democratic decision-making. And for the U.S. at this point, they're the only undamaged great power. They have a monopoly on the nuclear weapons. They have over half of the world's industrial production. They have the largest gold reserves by far, just on paper, and that's just a fraction of it because they recover enormous amounts of Axis gold, both in Europe and in East Asia. And a lot of these go to fund covert operations and things like the Liberal Democratic Party in Japan, the sort of ruling one party of Japan that's existed to the present day. We don't even really know about these angles. But so this is another example of just deep political power taking over, and America becoming essentially an empire as per the designs of its oligarchic class, the overworld of corporate wealth.
So, Aaron, part of the narrative that was used to justify the First Cold War was the idea that the Soviet Union was hell-bent on world domination. They were trying to overthrow all independent governments. Of course, we know now that's pretty ridiculous. And I should say that a book that we've talked about in this series is The Doomsday Machine by Daniel Ellsberg. And that book is, I think, very important because it shows that when he was working at the Rand Corporation, which is basically an arm of the Pentagon, they all knew that the Soviet Union, at least from a military perspective, was not in any way threatening the West or really the world, that U.S. military might was always significantly more advanced. The U.S. military technology, missiles, nuclear weapons were all significantly more advanced. So talk about this narrative that was used to justify the First Cold War and the creation of this empire by trying to inflate the threat supposedly posed by the Soviet Union.
As you allude to, the Soviet Union had been fighting a brutal war. Really, the Soviet losses in World War II exceed anything ever experienced in the history of human civilization. They lost 26.6 million people to the United States, 400,000. Okay, which means that gets rounded up to 27 million. So it gets rounded up 400,000. So basically, the U.S. losses in comparison to the Soviet losses are a rounding error. Okay, it's astounding what the Soviet Union suffered during that war. Stalin had begged the U.S. to enter the war earlier. Churchill really lobbied against that. wanted them more to protect the British Empire in Northern Africa, especially. And so they really leave the Soviets to do the bulk of the fighting. And the USSR, it gets described after the fact that the Soviets are really treacherous, and that they went back on their word. But this really wasn't the case. It came out that eventually that by and large, Stalin had adhered to the things that they had agreed at Yalta and at other conferences. And there's even a surviving document that you can see.
Sounds like Stalinism to me.
It's called the percentages documents. I have found a picture of it. So you can actually see in this sort of famous or infamous document, which Churchill called the naughty document. And it was sort of put down on a scrap of paper that was nearby, also known as the percentages agreement. But it's Stalin and Churchill at the Fourth Moscow Conference in October of 1944, dividing up Eastern Europe and Southern Europe.
This is the one where Stalin famously owns Churchill so bad and makes Churchill so angry because he's talking about all the Nazis he's going to execute. And Churchill was like, "Oh, no, you can't do that. I never, you don't." He was so offended at the idea of executing all these hordes of Nazis. Even FDR was getting in on it. Stalin's joking around about it. Churchill is just furious. Very funny story.
Europe, so you see Yugoslavia as like a 50-50 split.
But on a serious note, though, what Sean's talking about also, it's just like it's so vital to understand that like all the horrors that we know of that took place in the Cold War, which were justified based on this idea of like we need to contain the Soviets are going to march west. The Soviets are going to go west and they're going to continue and they're going to we need to do all these horrible fucking things throughout the world, throughout the Cold War, to prevent Soviet aggression was always a lie. It was always a lie. You know, it was a lie from moment one. It was never going to happen. The idea that the Soviet Union, after losing 26 million people in the war, we're going to continue fighting and then take on the British Empire and take on the Americans and take on Western Europe was always 100% bullshit. And people still believe this today. Our pro-NATO leftist friends still believe this shit today. If only the Nazis were Indian, then Churchill would have slaughtered them himself. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. He would have been more than happy to.
For influence, and you have Bulgaria, Greece on here. The British and the Americans would end up controlling Greece. That seemed to be part of the deal. And Stalin really sticks to this. In fact, it causes a rift between the Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union, a kind of a split in the communist world over this, because Tito wants to support the Greeks who are fighting against the monarchists and so on, and they're leftists. And Stalin says, "Are you crazy? The Americans will never accept losing Greece. It's like a key to their plans in the Mediterranean. They're never going to tolerate this." So Stalin stuck to the plan. Tito was more idealistic about it, but Stalin adhered mostly to these agreements. So it was really the U.S. side that was more duplicitous about this, and even sort of liberal normie historians like Eric Alterman have written about this. This shouldn't be especially controversial to say that the Soviets essentially adhered to these agreements.
Yeah, James, it's true. Yeah, they believe it's still about Russia. This is why we can't negotiate. It's why we can't negotiate. They don't just want these disputed Eastern Ukraine republics. No. They want to take all of Ukraine, then they want to march west across. It's the exact same justification today. Yeah, they're going to keep going. They're going to take Poland. They're going to come after everybody. You're going to have Ruskies crossing the Thames if you don't stop them right now. It's what these people still believe to this day. It's the exact same phenomenon. It's pretty telling, isn't it, when the Soviets defeat literal Nazis and you assume that you're next. Huh. It does kind of make you go, huh, doesn't it? Just a little bit.
U.S., for Cold War purposes, mischaracterized Soviet actions to say that they were not honoring agreements and that they were aggressive. So this is a key part of how the Cold War mythology gets established.
We had to do Gladio. We had to do Gladio to prevent the Soviet aggression. You know, fucking preposterous.
And I'll go ahead and elaborate this chronology here as to the main events that led to the Cold War. So you have George Kennan and his long telegram, which comes out in 1946. This is sort of famously described as setting the main ideological framework for containment. And the way that the Soviet Union gets depicted is, in very dire terms. In summary, he writes,
Aaron, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you should just really briefly mention who Kennan was. He was, of course, a major diplomat who had served in the Soviet Union and knew it from the inside.
Yeah, Kennan was a guy in the State Department, and his boss was Dean Acheson, and he was contemplating resigning from or quitting the Foreign Service before too long when he wrote this. He writes this, it seems, partly to please Dean Acheson, his boss. So he has some insider knowledge about the Soviets, but there's an element of kind of careerism here also in his dire depictions of the Soviet Union, I think. So, and in part, he describes them, in a way here that I think is very useful for people who wanted a Cold War and who needed a Cold War for their sort of geopolitical strategy following the war. Kennan wrote, "In summary, we have here a political force committed fanatically to the belief that with the US, there can be no permanent modus vivendi. The problem of how to cope with this force is undoubtedly the greatest task our diplomacy has ever faced, and probably the greatest it will ever have to face." It was written as a telegram, so it's like the wording is a little weird. But he's saying this is like this huge challenge to the US, and they believe that they cannot exist with the United States. This was just not true. The Russians and the Soviets wanted to exist with the United States. They would have liked to have had some of the aid that went to Western Europe to help rebuild their society.
Yeah, can we have some of that Marshall Plan as well?
Supposed ally in that
considering
war,
we won the fucking war.
So Aaron, speaking of aid after World War II, in terms of the Marshall Plan, there actually was money offered to the USSR, but it was less than what was offered to the defeated Nazi Germany. And at that point, I think it was more disrespect than anything else. And so the sense was, fine, we'll go rebuild on our own, rather than sort of accepting something. So
why do you want to help the Nazis and put these fascist Japanese back in charge in these countries, and you're not going to give us the same help? Kind of weird behavior for a country that supposedly was against the Nazis. Kind of strange, isn't it?
Embarrassingly small compared to the people who just killed millions of from our country and destroyed 25 years of wealth and just sort of snuffed all that out from a huge amount of people. Just kind of made all of that disappear, all this productive capacity. Some like 75% consumption drops by like about half. Like it's such a huge plummet in economic consumption. And Europe sees all this money pour in, some like $12 billion or something like that, which is massive in today's money. And compare that to, they offer more to Nazi Germany than they do to the USSR, who then declines it, obviously.
Yeah, and people talk about how important Lend-Lease was, and it was important to help provide military materiel, weapons, tanks to defeat the Nazis, but that wasn't free money. That was aid, and the Soviet Union and then later post-Soviet Russian Federation were forced to pay back those billions and billions of dollars to the US and didn't actually pay it back until the mid-2000s.
Yeah, and there were also strings attached to the Marshall Fund that were not going to be acceptable to the Soviet Union, and probably intentionally put in there to make sure that didn't happen. So that also ends up being the case with arms control and the nuclear weapons control later. That it gets poisoned by the U.S., who puts in measures that they know will be unacceptable to the Soviet leadership, and so they're not able to cooperate. But then you can blame the Soviets and say, "Oh, look, they backed out." So shortly after, Kennan issues the long telegram, which I think you have to see Dean Acheson's hand there as well. You have the Iron Curtain speech in March of 1946 from Winston Churchill, where he describes how this Iron Curtain has been laid across Europe, and this is kind of an aggressive, saber-rattling speech, right after the end of World War II. In March of 1947, you have Truman's Truman Doctrine speech, where he often says that the U.S. will support free peoples who are endangered around the world. And it doesn't really make much of a distinction between like vital and not so vital American security interests. So this is another escalation of the Cold War. It's really in large part about the Greeks and the civil war going on in Greece, and also
Frost Banana
coming down the pike. 1947, the U.S. Truman signs the National Security Act. This creates the CIA, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the National Security Council. And this is the real national security state structure of the U.S. empire is basically laid out at this time. CIA gets created at the behest of Wall Street lawyers and bankers, people like Alan Dulles of Sullivan and Cromwell, Ferdinand Eberstadt and James Forrestal of Dillon Reed, a Wall Street investment bank. And within this passage, within the National Security Act, there's the elastic clause that Clark Clifford put into it, which is very banal sounding. That the CIA would, quote, perform such other functions and duties related to intelligence affecting the national security as the National Security Council may from time to time direct. So it just sort of obliquely says the CIA will do some other things that the National Security Council tells it to.
Yeah, don't worry about
specify what that is. But of course,
like
it means
assassinations, rigging elections,
sexual blackmail,
other activities.
Yeah, exotic forms of assassination, and so on. I mean, everything under the sun.
Child sex trafficking,
everything,
whatever
you can think of. And so this is put in there in 1947. In 1948,
funding Nazis.
You have NSC 10.2, which elaborates on covert
some
operations.
Other stuff.
I'll give you a little quote here from the document itself. Covert operations are so planned and
selling crack
that
and
any U.S. government responsibility for them is not evident to unauthorized persons, and that if uncovered, the U.S. government can plausibly disclaim any responsibility for them. So already a year after the CIA has established, they're laying out the sort of legal, I mean, you can't even call it a legal justification. It's more of a declaration of just how it's going to be in these kind of national security documents. And because you've defined the Soviet Union as an existential threat bent on global domination with which there can be no peaceful modus vivendi, then you set the stage for being able to justify
And do pretty
this
much
kind
anything.
of state power. And it's not, these documents are kept secret. It's not like the public was debating like, well, wait, what does it mean if we're going to have a secret service doing all these things and then lying about it? Isn't this going to be kind of anti-American, sort of a more of a imperial monarchist kind of an institution, which it was.
There's just no limit to the evils you can commit when you've convinced yourself that you're under this level of existential threat. And that's one of the things that's very interesting about Jakarta method as well, is going into the sort of like diaries of some of the people that were behind these early days in the CIA were very much true believers. Like, they were not people that were lying to themselves about the role that they were playing, the evil role that they were playing in the world. They were real true believers that thought that the things they had to do, the fucking absolute horrors that they had to commit, were just absolutely necessary to prevent this like even greater evil from taking over. It was all for the greater good. And when you're a true believer like that, and framing their crimes in this kind of legalistic way, there's just no limit to the evils you can take part in. Right? Because it's all being done for the greater good, to protect people, to protect America, to protect freedom and democracy in this bullshit. You know? These people really believed this. And it's like when you look in the long history of the CIA and the absolute ludicrously evil stuff that they were getting up to, you ask yourself these questions. How can anyone ever do this? And that's how. Is because they told themselves that they were the good guys in this fundamental battle between good and evil. And there's absolutely no limit to the evils you can commit when you're under that kind of existential threat.
It was pretty much taking things that we would have been against philosophically for the British Empire and adapting them to the American case. And since it's kind of problematic, they just got around that by not talking about covert operations. So it's like it's very similar to the covert operations themselves. We're not going to be honest about what policies actually are, because we can use covert operations to make things happen.
And Dimitri, you know that clip, that tweet you just shared, right? That tweet you just shared, I'm sure you know what thread that's from. The Third Reich didn't follow us annexed by the U.S. West Germany was a U.S. puppet state that had more Nazis staffing the government than Hitler did, and NATO was developed as a fascist aegis to prevent good ideas from destroying capitalism. Cold War policy was Nazi by nature. And look at here's the thread. the famous quote. One of my other lasting contributions to the Twitter website, in addition to my tweet about MS-13, one of my other lasting contributions. I have been saying some of this stuff for a while now, haven't I?
Say they didn't even happen. And we're not even going to be honest about the fact that we've assumed this power of using covert operations as a
blue check for now
implement policy. So it's creating layers of secrecy and obfuscation and historical stupefaction of the American people. And it's
effective
profoundly
stuff, exactly what you're saying.
And it's established very early on in the Cold War. You have the Berlin airlift around this time as well, which gets depicted as Soviet aggression, when Soviets are taking actions that are reasonable, considering that they actually really fear a united Germany again, and they preferred for a sort of pastoralized, neutral Germany that would be broken up. But that wasn't what the U.S. takes steps to introduce a currency to get for all the other non-Soviet blocs. And Berlin is right there, and really what should be on the eastern side, but it's considered part of the West. So they have this big airlift. You have a war scare.
The idea of Berlin being split in half too is just so preposterous. When you look at like the map of Germany, it's like, oh yeah, the Soviets have half of Germany, but we're taking half of Berlin. So why? It's total nonsense.
More in 1948, which is exaggerated for sort of nefarious purposes. And then in 1949, you have the communists winning in China and the Soviet development of the atomic bomb. And so all these events happen under Truman's term. And these are the early stages of the Cold War. These are the sort of main events, and they're all depicted as communism aggressively on the march and a force bent on overthrowing, everything that America holds sacred.
If only we're true.
They become the Manichaean devil that justifies whatever the U.S. empire wants to do.
If only that were true. If only the delusions that they told themselves were actually remotely accurate. Hello, Barkley. What's up? Listen, this is the link to the video, folks. I think that's all for today. And again, if you want to watch the entire video, please watch it over on the Multipolarista YouTube feed. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to Aaron's podcast, American Exception, as well. Highly recommend you do both of those things. Don't just watch this here. Don't just watch this here. But what you should do, though, as well, I'm going to say one more time, is subscribe to this Twitch stream. You should subscribe to the Multipolarista YouTube and Aaron's podcast, but you should also subscribe to this program. A few more generous chatters could get us to hit the sub goal. I've got to get going soon. I'm going to go pick up my kid from school. And tomorrow we got a big election night spectacular. Big election night spectacular on TRRS tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Big guests, big A-list celeb guest stars coming on to talk about the election tomorrow. I know you're all voting. All our American watchers are all out voting right now. Probably not even watching this stream right now because you're lining up already. And if you're in line, then stay in line. Okay? But please, subscribe to this Twitch stream. Join the community. It costs $5 per month. You can also subscribe completely free of charge using your Amazon Prime account. It costs nothing at all. Costs nothing whatsoever. Get all the wonderful emotes. Some of the very best emotes on this very platform. Join the Discord community. You won't regret it. I'll be watching you too with the rest of my election protection militia. Good. That's good to know. Good to know. Camped out in front of Denby High School. We love it. I'm happy to hear it. So I'm just going to wait for a moment for all those subs to roll in. Of course, any moment now, they're all going to start rolling in. Everyone's getting ready to subscribe to this show. I know you wouldn't just leave me hanging. Oh shit, I don't want to have an echo. You wouldn't just... Sorry. I know you wouldn't just leave me hanging, doing a pitch to get people to subscribe and just have nothing. I know people in the chat would not humiliate me like this.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Wouldn't leave me embarrass myself in this way, obviously. Thank you, John. John, thank you. Thank you for the gifted sub, John McCain's Ghost. I really appreciate that. You're very, very supportive, John. I feel like my mods shouldn't be the ones bailing me out in these moments, but okay. But okay. I feel like my mods are already doing enough and probably shouldn't be left out to be holding the bag when I'm here humiliating myself, doing my final last-ditch effort to get some subs before the end of the stream. I'm sending the Dems $3. Well, that's even better, obviously.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
If you're in line to vote, do not let anyone give you food or water because they're criminals. Thank you, Up the Reds. That's absolutely right. And thank you, Regular Mole Rat Dragon, for the 17 months tier 1. Thank you. Very, very kind of you.
Count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you, Kijiji Genie, as well, for the gifted sub to Green Key. Thank you, Kijiji Genie. I really appreciate that. Thanks for the stream. I don't think you're humiliating yourself. Okay, well, I appreciate that, Comrade Social Distancing. I feel very... it's been going on 3 years doing this now. Still don't feel super comfortable doing the whole, request for money thing. I'm better, obviously, but still makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. Do I have to get a Disney Plus now so I can cancel it? That's right. If you don't have enough money for a sub, folks, it's easy. I mean, you just got to look in your household budget. You can make the decision. Disney Plus, that's like what, $13 a month or something like that. That's one sub plus a gifted sub.
Rob to talk you through all this.
That's one sub plus a gifted sub. Easy. Thank you, Comrade Social Distancing, for the gifted sub. Thank you. I appreciate that. Antifa thugs handing out stolen food at the polls. We hate to see that. We absolutely hate to see that. It's also tomorrow, the season finale of this program. It's the season finale of TRRS. We will be back on Wednesday with the season premiere. The season 3 premiere begins on Wednesday. Very exciting. Who knows what craziness, what fun, what mysteries are awaiting us in season 3. What twists and turns, the guest stars. Who knows what we're going to experience in season 3. Will your mustache be back for the premiere? I think it's going to take a little bit longer, frankly. The season finale is an election special. That's right. It's a big event. Big event in the season finale. Well, that's what I tell myself is like the first, even though I started streaming like in 2019 or something like that, I think the first iteration of this program was the 2020 election. So it's only, I think that's kind of how we can measure these things. So the midterm election special, the midterm election spectacular will be the season finale. We've got a brand new season 3 of TRRS beginning on Wednesday. 2 whole years of this program in the books. That's hard to believe, isn't it? That's hard to believe, isn't it? 2 entire years of doing this stream. How long have I been, how many hours? How many hours have I been doing this? So many. So many hours. We do have a hype train close as well. I don't know. If anyone else wants to subscribe, I see a few non-subscribed chatters. If anyone else wants to subscribe, we do have a hype train, and then you get emotes and other good stuff. And not only did you get the amazing emotes from this program, you will get other emotes as well. I'm at 1.36 thousand hours since that time, which is not as much as some people do, but for me, it's a lot. 1.36 thousand hours.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob.
Incoming new arc where Rob acquires new hats and shirts. I probably should get a little outfit change. It's true. I probably should. Thank you, Pathogen, for gifting a sub. Thank you, Pathogen7. First gift sub in the channel. I really appreciate that, Pathogen. Thank you. And thank you to Dakadoon as well for the gifted sub. I really appreciate that, Dakadoon. I really appreciate all the support. Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe that seems like kind of a veiled insult from Green Key there, talking about my look, my apparently repetitive looks. Maybe that's something I can work on, though. Maybe we can get some more outfit changes, some more outfit diversity. Who knows? We'll see. We never know what's going to happen in season 3, folks. You never know. You just never know what's going to happen. Outrageous novelty glasses, perhaps. Season 3 free hat. I said, what's up, Sinchel? I would like to make a TRRS hat, and unironically, I think that would be pretty cool. I thought you were going to be a shirt guy. I mean, that's just really like summer weather stuff, though. I mean, we're in fall weather, and I can't be wearing these wacky shirts. I do have some good shirts, but I feel like it's not appropriate for this time of year. Does Christopher Clues do a novelty line? I should check into that. I don't know if they're going to be returning my calls. I think I was one of those cases where they're like, why did we give our product to this guy? That was a mistake. We maybe made a mistake on this. So, I don't know if I'm going to be getting more free glasses from the Christopher Clues Corporation. The only major eyeglass manufacturer that supports global revolution and communism. I mean, we love them. We love them, folks. Unfortunately, they're MAGA communists. Yeah, very disappointing. Very disappointing turn. Season 3, the suit, English accent, and stash returns. I could wear a blazer tomorrow. You know, maybe for the election special. Well, I could spoil one of the special guests that got lined up for tomorrow. Should I tie that to some kind of a sub thing? That's kind of exploitative, isn't it? I could spoil a big A-list guest I got coming on to the show tomorrow. You know what? I'm not going to tie it to fucking subs, okay? Hopefully we get a couple more. I would like to get to 30. That would be cool. Cenk Uyghur, exactly. No, it's not. But Washington Post political reporter Dave Weigel will be joining the program tomorrow. We'll be calling in on the election special. We got official real political journalists calling in here. Dave Weigel will be joining the program tomorrow for like 15-20 minutes. Looking forward to have him call in. I got a number of other people lined up to talk to us. We do not need election specials, election post game only. It's not a race. I agree that we don't need them, but it's like it's just a good time to stream. You get exposed to a new audience sometimes, you know. There's more people looking at this Twitch politics stuff, you know. And it's fun. It's not like we need to get into the big horse race thing, but it's just a good excuse to do a stream, right? It's just a good excuse to do a stream. Hopefully we'll get to get some good viewers. We can talk about the failing of American democracy. It is good streaming weather. I would say tentatively 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. And like, depending on what's going on, maybe I can hang out after, or I don't know what's going to be going on after. But it will be a wonderful election spectacular. The TRRS. You
can count on me. You're gonna have a good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you so much, Dimitri, for another gifted sub. I really appreciate that, Dimitri. Thank you. No, I'm just a hater. No, it's okay. I encourage that as well, Theo. I encourage that as well. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for subscribing to the channel and for supporting the stream. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. What do we got? What do we got in terms of raids? Sorry, I don't know what that was.
The anti-fucking...
This is my thinking face. It's a combination camel chewing on grass and thinking. I actually looked at my cat right now thinking he was making those sounds. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's give a raid to our friend Hildebeest. Thank you again, everyone, for watching. They did get rid of hosting, yes. I don't know why. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever. God, that's how long it's been since... Sean, don't make me get mad at you again. Don't make me call you out publicly again, Sean. I don't want to have to do it. All right? So please join me tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Pyongyang time, I believe, right? 8 a.m. Pyongyang time tomorrow for the TRRS midterm election spectacular featuring special guests, including Dave Weigel of the Washington Post and others. Should be a great time. Probably won't be a great time for America. In fact, it will be bad, I'm sure. But please join me. I'll talk to you then. Goodbye. I love you. Take care. See you soon.